Get a red. And you have pretty clear. Okay.
Clock.
And not very good.
No, just clock.
Morning, everyone. 9 o'clock. This first meeting of the 2025-2027 Benton County Budget Committee. I'll call the meeting to order. Our first item of business is to select a budget committee chair. Nominations.
I move to nominate Curtis Wright as chair.
Second.
Any dissent? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. We also need to select a budget committee vice chair. Nominations?
I nominate Commissioner Wise for the position of vice chair.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next item of agenda, the presentation of the proposed Library County Service District budget.
And Mr. Chairman, if I might, just to kind of kick us off here a little bit as we get started, and certainly I've invited the folks from the Library Service District here to join us. But first and foremost, for the record, Rick Krager, Assistant County Administrator for the county. Great to see all of you here yet again. It's been actually 2 years. It's hard to believe. And again, just appreciate all of the time and effort that you all have been putting into this and will put into this going forward. Also, just want to take a moment to, and I know I did late last week, but just recognize the great effort that's gone in by so many people to kind of get to this point. Particularly want to recognize the folks of the Financial Services Department. They've had a lot of transition and change, and people have really stepped up and done a whole lot. So I just definitely want to recognize the team effort to get us here. Just a quick tour of kind of the next 3 days. As you noted, we will have our service districts here first for the library and 911. And then we will be moving into the county budget shortly after those. And what you will obviously have is the initial budget message that we will share with you along with the budget document. And then we will start to get into the specifics of each department. You're going to get a lot of information, a lot of time will go into this. And again, I know the department heads will do a great job of really sharing each of their department's perspectives. So again, just wanted to thank you once again and look forward to the next this week as we navigate through this. And so with that, we will kick off. And as part of the packet that is provided to you is the Benton County Library Service District. That's a mouthful. And I'll just do a quick sort of summary of the budget, and then I would like to turn it over to Ashley to say a few words in terms of the actual service itself. So again, we are presenting to you, and you have in your packet the actual budget document itself. We don't have a prepared presentation, but again, as most of you know, the district is a separate municipal entity from the county government, but we, as per law, the Board of Commissioners are the governing body, and therefore we are responsible for approving of that budget. Essentially, with this particular budget, we are the collector of taxes that is levied, and those dollars are then transferred down to the actual provider, which is the city of Corvallis. So within our budget, and as outlined on the page here, we are requesting for 25-27, recommending, I should say, in the proposed budget, $7,711,565 to be exact is a budget. We are also recommending the levy of a rate of the current amount of 0.3947 per 1,000 of assessed value. Again, that is the limit that we have on that particular rate. So that is what we are asking for in this process. Very sorry, I should have asked cell phones. So with that, I will ask Ashley and guest to be able to provide maybe a little summary of the work of the library services.
Hey, thank you for having me. Can you hear me okay? Sounds good. Okay, so for those of you that don't know me, I'm Ashley Chavez. I'm the library director of the Corvallis-Benton County Public Library. And with me is Rachel Denyu. She's the library's confidential administrative specialist, and she's also our budget liaison and kind of the expert in the budget department. So I brought her along in case you had any really specific questions, but also to recognize the effort she put into building our budget. So I'm really happy to be here today, and I do want to say thank you for your efforts regarding this 25-27 budget, the Library Service District, and your support of the library. I do want to point out that fiscal year 25-27 marks the first year that the city of Corvallis has moved to a biennial budget. And with that, the Corvallis-Benton County Library budget now actually aligns with the service district budget, which is really convenient for me. So you can view more about the library's full proposed budget for 25-27 on the City of Corvallis's website. You can take a look at the proposed budget. It was prepared utilizing county estimations for the library service district, so the exact numbers you do see in front of you today. And with this funding, along with funds of the City of Corvallis local option levy, the library's budget for the biennium ahead is almost 70% dedicated revenue. Less than 1% of our budget comes from fees for revenue, and the remaining portion of our budget comes from the City of Corvallis General Fund. So the upcoming biennial budget for the library is $21.4 million. Approximately 63% of that budget is spent on personnel costs, with the remainder being spent on facility maintenance, software, computers, equipment, vehicles, program supplies, vendor services, and of course, our diverse and sizable collection of materials in a variety of formats. Our staffing levels for the year ahead are flat at 47.625 FTE. Due to the rising cost of doing business and inflation, our materials and collections budget for the upcoming biennium did not see an increase, and nor did our, yes.
Just got a email from Chaz Jones asking, does anyone have a Zoom link that is functioning?
Yeah, I think staff's working on it.
Did you want me to pause or to keep going? Okay, got it. Let's see. So we also did not increase our casual budget for casual employees. However, given the cuts to public libraries that we're seeing across the state, many of you are likely aware of those, I'm really grateful for the strong community support that we see in Benton County through our various tax measures, and it helps keep our budget in a healthy place for the time being. It is worth noting that every building in the library service district has a different facility owner, and each owner is responsible for a variety of costs related to building ownership that you don't see reflected in this budget. That includes both everyday facility upkeep and long-term capital maintenance needs, along with janitorial costs, utilities, and building insurance typically. And in the past year, as most of you know, we have seen an official change in building ownership at the Monroe Community Library. With that change, we now actually have 2 buildings in the service district that are owned by a nonprofit entity in the district. And those nonprofits have to fundraise or write grants to cover the costs of ownership. Now, the library and our very supportive nonprofit organization, the Friends and Foundation of the Library, are always there to lend a helping hand. It is still a sizable burden on our smaller and more rural communities. And this is a really unique model in Oregon. Trust me, I've looked around. No one else has it. We're very special that way. But it does create, and while there are many aspects to it that work well, it does create inequity amongst library services throughout our service district in Benton County. So for that reason, in the year ahead, we plan to work with an expert consultant to review various library district structures and funding models to help us create both short and long-term plans for creating a more equitable and functional library system, especially helping out those nonprofit owners in our rural communities. So as we reflect on our past budget in the years ahead, I did want to highlight one notable project that was in partnership with Benton County Health Department. As most of you know, in October 2024, the City of Corvallis and Benton County entered into an agreement allowing for use of the Corvallis Public Library's main meeting room during unexpected closures to provide a cooling or warming center for the public. So this was really born out of that ice storm we had in 23, where the library was closed for several days. And typically we're a warming center, but we weren't open. So, you know, after that incident happened, we kind of did a debrief, and this idea came to be. So in the past fiscal year, thanks to this partnership and proactive planning, the Benton County Health Department and the library were able to offer even additional services beyond the scope of that MOU. We provided warming center hours on a planned holiday closure where we knew we were going to see below freezing temperatures, and also provided emergency overflow overnight sheltering during the winter. Over a period of 2 weeks, the library was a site for both intake and overflow shelter for a total of 6 days. And on most of those nights, over 100 people were served in some way. And I think this partnership does a great job of illustrating how well the city of Corvallis and Benton County can work together to provide support to the community in times of need. So looking ahead, we have a couple of exciting projects for the year ahead. We have a signage update at all locations. We're doing a new summer intern program for junior and seniors in high school. We're refreshing our volunteer program. And we're also doing an analysis of a new potential automated materials handling system, which could help improve efficiency and accuracy of checking in returned materials and sorting them. Looking even further ahead, I think budget times might be challenging when fiscal year 27-29 arrives. And so it's our intent to carefully and thoughtfully review our budget constraints through this current biennium and identify any steps we might need to take in order to continue providing library services at their current level moving forward. So with that, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and for your support of the library, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Are there any questions?
And Mr. Chairman, if I might just add some final context in terms of the budget that you're approving here. Again, as I mentioned, these are a collection of taxes. Within the documentation we provided to you, there is an estimate that we're using. We are assuming relatively lower amount that we've seen in terms of property taxes in the past. About a 3.2% growth is what we're seeing, traditionally seen up closer to 4%. So that's one element I want to point out. There's another element, and I thank Ashley for pointing this out to me, and you'll find this throughout our budget. We have one more budgetary supplement to do for 23-25. So that's an adjustment that has to be done on the adopted budget that is currently in front of you. You might note in the information, particularly on page number 4, there is a surplus of about 424 from 21-23. That will be part of this next supplement. So those dollars will be going to the service or to the city of Corvallis as a pass-through. So I appreciate Ashley had pointed that out, that that is a part that it's not an error. It's just there's still a supplement that is left to do. And then lastly, in terms of the actual budget itself, you will notice there is just a relatively small portion, $39,816. That is basically for administrative costs for the county overhead, as well as for the service district component. We can use the dollars that we collect for the service district admin, but for the county overhead, we pay that ourselves, which is representative of that $21,000 that you see in terms of additional revenue. So again, wanted to just make sure you had all the facts in relation to this budget. Again, pretty straightforward, but again, Ashley and myself can answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? No questions. Is there a motion to approve the budget and set the levy?
I move to approve, let's see.
Chair, point of order. Do we have to have a public hearing on the budget before we move to approve it? Yeah.
It's been 2 years since I've done this. I forget things. We do need to have a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to comment? No? Nobody online? Okay. Then we'll close the public hearing. Okay. Now I will ask for a motion.
I move to approve a tax rate of 3947 per $100,000 of assessed value in tax year 25 and 26 to support the 25-27 budget for the Benton County Library Services County Service District.
Second.
I will second with the point that I think Commissioner Malone said 100,000 of assessed value, but the correction to 1,000 of assessed. Yeah, and I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any questions? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion approved. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, there is a second motion. You have to approve the tax rate, which you just did, but you also need to now approve the budget.
Okay.
And it's there for you.
I'll move to approve the 25-27 proposed budget for the Benton County Library Services County District in the amount of $7,711,565.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Questions? No? All in favor?
Aye. And Chair, I'll just note too, Chaz Jones has joined us online, and I think I faintly heard him vote aye.
I did. Sorry, I couldn't be there in person, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ashley and Rachel. Next on the agenda is the presentation of the proposed 911 County Service District budget.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman, and we'll come up for you here shortly, but we'll be referring to starting on page 7 of your packet. Similar to the library, this is the Benton County 911 Emergency Communication Service County Service District. Again, that's the official name. And once again, similar to the Library Service District, the Board of Commissioners is the governing body, and as such, we are approving this as part of their authority within the budget process. So again, this is a district that was actually formed with the vote of the people on November 5th of 2019. It also is similarly dollars that are collected on a current 45 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. That is the current rate that is in place. It does have a rate of maximum 65 cents. You will see in this proposal, we are proposing to keep it the same at the 45 cents, but did want to point out there is some flexibility in that. Dollar-wise, again, there is a small portion of money that is set aside for administrative cost of $43,204, which is for our central cost overhead, as well as expenses to manage the service district, audit fees, et cetera. The rest of the dollars are transferred to the city of Corvallis, where it operates within accordance to the IGA that we have them to provide 911 services to the community. So we do have folks here from the city of Corvallis. They don't have any necessarily prepared remarks, but certainly are available to any questions that you might want to ask of them in terms of the actual services. But what we have before you and is 2 motions, again, to approve the current rate at 45 cents and then to be able to approve the total budget presented to you on page 8 for $8,703,675. So happy to take any questions, or if there's questions you have of the folks from Corvallis.
Commissioner Shepard.
Yeah, so I appreciate that you brought up the taxing rate. So it is, like you said, we're 20 cents under the allowable. And my understanding is that there's a shortage of 911 call operators in the country. It's a big deal. And that it's a large cost to get and to retain people. So I was wondering where the recommendation to stay at 45 cents comes from. Is that us, or is that a recommendation from the city? And then I have a part 2.
That is basically, we've chosen to go ahead and keep that rate, but certainly the folks from Corvallis could talk a little bit.
We meaning the county? Okay.
That's our proposal.
Okay. And then the part 2 of that is this is this an area where the city of Corvallis could get more funding to be able to afford the 911? Because I know retention and recruitment for these positions are really difficult. So I was like, is this an opportunity we're missing by going under the allowable rate?
At this time, we don't see a need to raise that. We are working through getting our vacancies filled. Currently, we're sitting, we just had a job offer go out this week, so we're now down to 4 vacancies with additional people in the queue to fill in those vacancies. We don't see a need necessarily to talk about raising the rate just yet due to the salary savings that we are experiencing, rolling those into reserves and allowing this to keep the rate set, be as equitable as we can to the taxpayer. But as we continue to look out into the future bienniums, we'll make sure that we're projecting when we do need to start having those conversations about raising the rate. But for right now, we're good where we're at.
Okay, and this is a biennial budget, correct?
This will be the first.
So we wouldn't be able to change that rate until what, 27?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Shepard, yeah, that is, well, you do have that ability. We could make a budget change. Obviously, it would require another process to go
Sure.
through if it was felt needed. But at this point, because it is a biennial budget, we are asking for approval for the 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Wong.
I might stand on my soapbox for just one moment. Now is not the time to raise any additional fees on any of our constituents. I would not be for it. And that is the hill I would die on. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I don't know how unusual it is to go to the voters and ask for a 65 cents, but this will be years 7 and 8 of keeping it at the 45 cents. And I just think that's was showed some vision. And the idea is the voters have approved the 65 cents so that it would be a bookkeeping adjustment to raise it if needed. Is that correct?
I wouldn't, I can't necessarily speak to what the intention was at the time. I wasn't part of the original formation of the service district, but yes, I do believe you would be correct in that it gave us the ability to go back and make adjustments as we needed without going back out to a full vote.
Right. Which I think shows the service has good support in the county, and as someone who's as a volunteer firefighter used the 911 system, and I think this service district is a fairer and probably more financially stable way to fund this service. So, and as liaison to the 911 board, I think we have quarterly meetings, and I generally ask, well, how is recruiting going? And I think we're authorized to have up to 24 operators plus 4 supervisors. Is that more?
24 is an accurate number. I'd have to check if the supervisors are.
And for the first several years, we were stuck at 16. We'd recruit, and then somebody would retire or move on. And it sounds like we're closer to 20 at this point, which means we're have made pretty good progress, and maybe that's an indication that it's slightly easier to do some recruiting. But as Commissioner Shepard said, it's a struggle and a demanding job. So it's the hurdles for someone who would like to do this job are considerable, and there's quite a bit of people that think they want to do it that just don't meet the qualifications. So I certainly hope we can continue to make progress on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Chaz? No? Okay. Thank you. With that, then we will open the public hearing on the proposed 911 Emergency Services County Services District. Anyone wish to address the committee?
I'll move to approve a tax rate.
I'll
Oh,
close it.
public hearing.
I'll close the public hearing.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
It's really Monday. You can't fool me.
That's right, it is Monday.
I move to approve a tax rate of 0.45 cents for $1,000 of assessed value in the tax year 2025 and 2026 to support the 25-27 budget for the Benton County 911 Emergency Communication Services County Service District.
For a second?
I'll second. If I may, I think Commissioner Malone, I think you said 0.45 cents as opposed to 45 cents. I second with that change. So, yeah.
Right.
Just want to be clear that, yeah.
All right.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Second motion on the budget.
I move to approve the 2025-27 proposed budget for the Benton County 911 Emergency Communications Service County Service District in the amount of $8,703,675.
For a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Discussion? No? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That's it. Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is the presentation of the proposed county budget.
So, Mr. Chairman, before I turn it to our fearless leader, County Administrator McEnany, I just want to point out that we will be speaking to the presentation that is the county budget message that is in front of you today. As I mentioned, that went out electronically this morning. Committee Member Jones hopefully has that, and if not, we can make sure that he does, but it did go out via email so that you all have it and it is in front of you. I just wanted to point out that it won't be part of the official packet, but is available online as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. McEnany.
Morning.
And Rick, one moment real quick. I know you know that I have a personal conflict today and can't be there. I think I'm probably going to have to jump off the call in the next 15 minutes, but I'm just want to give everybody a heads up that I have to run at some point here.
Thank you, Chaz, and hope all is going well.
Thank you.
Morning. This will be my first Benton County budget message, and it's just been such a pleasure to be with you all. In 2025 Benton County to 27 Benton County proposed budget was developed using both the 2040 Thriving Communities Initiative and the Benton County Board of Commissioners' strategic priorities. So within this framework, the BOC established 5 core priorities to guide the county administrator in the development of this budget. This includes community resiliency, community safety and justice systems improvement, health and equity in all actions, homelessness and housing insecurity, and responsible governance. So what are our core priorities? We're going to go through them just really quickly today. One is community resiliency. We want to support local livability and economic opportunities. We want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and we want to address climate change and institute long-term adaptive actions to prepare for this uncertain future. Community safety and justice systems improvement, advance systemic approaches to increase well-being by balancing treatment and accountability to transform lives, ensure safety, and strengthen our communities. Health and equity in all actions. We want to integrate equity, diversity, inclusion, social justice, health, and well-being to effectively support prosperous and sustainable communities. Housing and homeless insecurity. Housing insecurity and homelessness. Provide tools and resources that ensure individuals and families have opportunities to live in accessible, safe, and affordable housing. And lastly, responsible governance. We want to identify innovative measures to further ensure integrity, transparency, and fiscal sustainability in county actions, policies, and endeavors. So as we look at the 23-25 adopted budget, as we're going through the review. Now, I joined in October of 2023, so I did not go through this last biannual budget. But luckily, Mr. Krager here to my right was here. But we had a great deal of change, not only with the new county administrator, but we had challenges. And then we had opportunities in executing the 23-25 adopted budget. Some key examples are the departure of the previous county administrator and under the leadership of two different interim county administrators. We recovered from the failure of a proposed bond measure to support a new sheriff's office and jail, and we pivoted the 23-25 adopted budget to an alternative focus. We recalibrated major capital projects caused by the redesign of the previously proposed courthouse. We had significant increases in construction costs due to delay and economic factors and unanticipated permitting and construction challenges. All of you were here for most of this and heard a lot about it. The hiring of a new county administrator in October 2023, following by an onboard of a newly established assistant county administrator position in March of 2024, and recruiting to a new chief financial officer. Before that, the county administrator had 16 direct reports. We felt that this allowed, in your last budget, to bring more capacity to the county administrator to be more strategic, to get into the data, and to be hopefully closer to our workforce. We evaluated and implemented the results of a study to determine if management and non-representative staff salaries were in alignment with market salaries. The results determined that current salaries were well below market, and to effectively address the county, improve the implementation of unplanned budgetary adjustments. Bargaining with the county's largest labor union resulted in an unsuccessful negotiation of a new contract, which also resulted in a labor disruption in November of 2024. The resolution rendered a higher fiscal impact that budgeted for 23 to 25. We had changed leadership, lots of changing leadership, several major departments that have created capacity issues in the county's ability to fully address improving operations, optimizing service delivery, and implementing several key initiatives. We navigated a very important and sensitive landfill expansion application that required a major dedication of time and resources to ensure the process was transparent, inclusive, and followed the intent of the law. Due to the increasing labor costs and benefits, addressing historically high levels of inflation, expanding services that include the new crisis center, a deflection program, and our campgrounds, and navigating higher construction equipment costs has resulted in a 25-27 budget proposal that will require both current and future adjustments. I'm now going to hand this off to our 25-27 budget development to Assistant County Administrator and former CFO Rick Krager to begin walking us through the development of our biannual.
Thanks so much, Rachel. Appreciate that. And again, want to be able to begin the process today by, again, this budget message, we are talking at a relatively high level, but to really sort of set the framework as we go into the next several days. You're going to hear a lot of information from a lot of different departments. And so we're going to really kind of try to put an umbrella on all the things that, again, we'll hear a lot more from them specifically. But want to just start out by, I guess, giving you sort of some of the things as we went into the development of this budget, some of the things that we were facing. And as outlined in the slides, I mean, one of the big pieces that we, as we came out of COVID, we had a lot of dollars, a lot of resources, and a lot of one-time money. And much of that is gone now. And those resources, again, we have put those to good use. But as we came out of COVID, obviously, we had to be thinking going forward in terms of sustainable revenues. It's important to note of increased labor cost. I think we're seeing this across all government right now in terms of we all want to be able to fairly compensate all of our employees, ensure that they're getting the appropriate wages, and we're able to retain a workforce. So again, that is a huge driver as we go into any kind of budget development, and we're seeing it everywhere in all counties. Obviously, you guys are very clear of the policy and economic changes that we're all facing, particularly at the federal level. That has an impact and may have more impacts on us as we move forward in the coming biennium and forward. Again, historic inflationary costs that we have seen over particularly this last 2 years, that has a roll-up effect. So again, is when we start talking about budget numbers and you start seeing higher percentages, a lot of this is an element of the cost increases that we saw over the last 2 years. I think it's also important to note, and Rachel alluded to this a little bit, is with cost of construction. We have some major capital projects that we've seen over the last 2 and 3 years, and those costs have gone up. I'm happy to say they're all balanced now and they're all moving along, but certainly we have to continue to watch that and navigate it. And then I think it's fair to say that, from a tax standpoint and the dollars that our primary general fund resources, I'd like to say is stable. Certainly we're seeing, again, is anywhere between 3 and 3.2% increase on an annual basis, which is relatively standard, but we had enjoyed larger increases in the past, mostly because of additional housing, additional opportunities that created a larger tax base. We're not projecting that as much going into that. Our last tax year, we only saw a 3.2% growth. So again, that is going to be an impact as we go into this budget discussion. So let me just spend a moment and talk about a term. I know the two Board of Commissioners and our two of our committee members remember this from last time we introduced the notion of current service level. And, I don't always like to go verbatim, but I think this is as good a definition I get, and it's a mouthful to say, is essentially a calculated cost of continuing current programs and services adopted by the Board of Commissioners, then phasing in and phasing out programs or services and eliminating one-time cost with the remainder adjusted by standard inflation. And I know that's a lot of technical jargon, but the idea of it is that what we do today, the service that we provide today, what's the cost tomorrow? We're trying to give a baseline of this is what it costs to continue to do things. Now, prior to the adoption of this standard, it was sort of more of, well, whoever asked for the dollar amount, and that's what was considered, and it's a bit arbitrary. Kurt, Chairman, had been through this before, and so the idea of this is to really try to keep as much standardization as can. Is it perfect? No. Yeah, but it is, again, a budget estimate and a way for us to get to a cost, a demonstration to you of this is what we believe the cost will be next biennium to run everything that we're doing today. Some of the key points of current service level is standardizing the practice of choosing a point in time to estimate our salaries and benefits. Sounds like a simple concept, but again, in budgeting, you have to pick a time. You have to say, all right, this is the time we go. We'd be able to do estimates based on those factors at the time. By the time that point in time and you get to actual budget option, things change. And that is, again, an element of this, but that's why we monitor this carefully. That's why we make budget adjustments as we go along. Another standard approach is inflation. We try to pick an indice that we can use so that, again, it's not an arbitrary, well, we think it costs this. We want to be able to apply some form of standardization, particularly to our materials and services cost, to make sure that your equalization across everything. The third is a really important one that is challenging, and it's really practicing disciplined position management. And again, I think for those that have been around, I think with with some, particularly in our health positions, we have to be very, very disciplined in knowing when we bring positions on. I think we changed this process in the current biennium so that there wasn't so much of adding positions, and that we wanted to really have a process that if positions needed to come on immediately, if they didn't have a demonstrated revenue and there was a workable need, we were not approving those as permanent. We need this process to occur to get permanency. So we went to more of a limited duration approach and request those in front of you. So again, that's a little bit different than what we had seen in past, but we really have to practice disciplined position management. Remember, in this budget, the biggest expense is personal services. So that is a very important element. And then finally, we have to really carefully analyze all programs and services to ensure adequate funding is available. And again, sounds like a simple thing, but we have to look at everything we do. There are many times we see a grant that will come in, and suddenly there is a program that is established. But if those grant dollars go away, and we're seeing a lot of that now with federal and state funding, we have to be very, very proactive to be able to come in front and say, we can't sustain that. We can't subsidize that. We have to make sure that we have the resources to pay for it. So a lot of analysis is really important on this. So let's get into some numbers. My favorite thing, again, a whole bunch of stuff here, but again, for orientation purposes, these are the primary categories in a budget. We have personal service, again, our largest cost. We have certainly materials and supplies is another cost that comes in. Capital outlay is bigger, obviously, than what we have seen in past because of the projects, debt service fund transfers, and then unappropriated reserves and contingencies. So what is intended to show here is where we're seeing, again, from a current service level, where we're at today with 23, 25, versus what we estimate the current service, how big of an increase you can see. So again, I'm going to point out a big portion, you're going to hear this throughout, is going to be in personal services. We'll talk about some of those drivers as I go further into this. And you're going to see some of the other changes. The other piece that's important to this as we get into this presentation is the general fund and local option levy. And from here on out, I'll probably just say general fund because it all is general fund. That's how we look at it, but we do separate those in two funds. Very important to note this in terms of what the current service level cost is, because once we do current service level, we have to compare it to the money we have, and we will see what's going to happen if we were to maintain current service level in our general fund. So let's talk about some of the drivers in relation to those percentages that you just saw. I'm talking about this more from a total fund standpoint. So first of all, the 32.2% growth. So again, Rachel mentioned in her opening comments, obviously, there was some unplanned, unanticipated cost in 23-25 that weren't initially in our budget in relation to market studies for our management unrepresented. We clearly saw that the county was well underneath market, and the Board of Commissioners and their leadership decided to, we needed to make some changes and adjustments to be able to get more within that market. So that was one element. We also obviously had, as mentioned, negotiation with our largest union, AFSCME. So this happened to be one of those bienniums where the contract came up in the middle of the biennium. So when you do a budget, you're making an estimate of what you think. Well, it's very clear what we ended up negotiating was higher than what we estimated. In all these cases, what I think, due to the prudent management, all of this was managed within the budget you all were in the Board of Commissioners shortly after and supplement that adopted. We chose to make sure that we were going to be frugal and we were going to be able to make that fit within the budget. That has a compounding effect, and we'll talk about that here shortly, but I just want to make sure I point that out. So in general, expected growth for the next biennium is 20 to 25% with a compounding element to this. Again, what we saw 2 years ago was approximately 15%. Remember, this is 2 years worth. So again, you think about the average gross increase of about 5% for each step, and then you add a COLA to that, you can start to see where you get to those percentages. But wanted to point out that obviously that's a little higher because of the compounding effect that we have of implementing that in 23-25. Health and dental benefits, again, they're rising. 10 to 15%. We are a self-insured county. I think we've been very successful in that. We'll talk more about that when we get into the financial services department, some of the elements of our employee benefit plan. But again, this is pretty standard. What we're seeing across all government is about an increase there. Another element that's built into the current service level here is pointed out to back to this 32%. So again, when you're thinking, salaries 20, 25%, what else is driving this up? Well, we've added 29 positions in our current service level because we're operationalizing the new Benton County Crisis Center. So that is additional positions that are in the process right now of being recruited, that we're going to operationalize that Crisis Center this coming July in terms of putting in place. So those are new positions. These are all, I do want to point out, again, you'll hear this from the department, these are all self-funded positions. They're generated through fees from behavioral health for a combination of capitation rates as well as insurance recovery. So again, I want to assure you this is not a general fund impact, but it does drive this 32%. That's one of the key drivers. Another element that you may remember from this last biennium, and those were 2 years ago when we were here, we had a major concern with our community health centers in terms of a budget challenge. That continued into this biennium as the Board of Commissioners were very involved in this as we reshot that budget. Part of that strategy, though, was to say these positions that were approved can't fill them. We have to make sure that we adjust the budget to be able to afford the dollars that are there. And so we made purposeful vacancy factor adjustments within that budget. Those are coming back now in terms of the need, because the money is there and support there. But again, want you to be aware that that's what's driving that up to that 32%. And then lastly, if I bore you with all this, if there's nothing you remember, please remember this last bullet. PERS is an issue. PERS is an issue, and I believe that you're seeing this across every jurisdiction, local jurisdictions, cities, counties, state, school districts, everybody I talk to, my colleagues, this is a big deal. Our rate has gone up 25% for next year. Now, it may not seem like a lot, but then you start to apply that rate to higher salaries, more positions. And when we do the math, the cost of PERS is 56% higher next biennium than it is right now. That's almost $12 million. So again, it's not all general fund, but a good portion of it. So this is, again, you'll hear this at the end when we talk about future challenges and opportunities. This is an area that we're all going to have to really think about. The last three categorical areas, not as, again, the biggest cost is personal service, so there's a lot more to this, but the 10.3%, again, you heard me say standard inflation. Again, that is what is applied. Sometimes there's less, sometimes there's more. I'll use pharmaceuticals as an example. A lot higher in terms of growth, so we had to make adjustments. But there are other things that we start trending and saying, all right, we inflate it, but your expenditure patterns suggest don't need that budget. So we make adjustments along the way in calculating the current service level. When you put it all together for materials and services that's not related to internal charges, it's about a 1.3% growth. But the driver that gets it up to the 10.3, remember, so there's internal departments, finance, HR, IT, fleet, facilities, all of those, they're internal service funds. So basically, they're paid for by all of the other departments. So think about it from the standpoint, they also have personal services. Their cost goes up. That's what you're seeing that is really driving it. So as I broke this out for you, I'm going to say about 26 to 28% about what we're seeing in terms of increase departments, which is cumulatively giving you that 10.3% increase. The capital outlay, the decrease that you see or saw on that chart, I think that one's pretty straightforward. As you know, we started a full cost of budget construction projects in 23-25. They're not all done, but a good share of them are. So for example, Crisis Center, that basically falls off. That is a project that is complete. We've partially done the courthouse, the district attorney's office. So in those budgets are essentially the continuation of the projects that are left, but obviously it's lesser than what we saw before. In the past, prior to this binding, we did not see big capital outlay amounts. Again, we did not have big facilities projects. So this will be something you'll see drop down as time goes along. And then lastly, debt service, again, you'll see an 18.4% increase. You might be thinking, well, gosh, what did you do? Was there more debt issued? The answer is no more debt issued. What happened was within our PERS bond and our amortization tables, there was planned a 1 year, I guess, 1 year non-payment. Again, it was part of the structure when the bonds were issued. So it gave us sort of a 1 year break. So it fell off. Now it's coming back. So that's what the increase is. So again, I don't want anybody to read into this as, hey, did we take on more debt? The answer is no, we didn't. Okay, this is a lot to look at, very colorful. I'm not an expert in terms of graphics, so I joke a little bit. Losing Lindsay, she was always the artistic one. So you'll have to do with a little of my art here. But really, we talked about current service level. I've given you kind of, we went through that process. This is what we think it's going to cost to keep doing business. Then you get into the funds. These are all the funds. We have 27 different funds. The great thing about government working in financial is it's lots of funds, as they always like to joke. And it certainly is a bit of a challenge in navigating all of this. But what this is meant to do is just to show you kind of what are some of the revenue changes. So now we're talking about money, and you can go through all these funds. I'm not going to go through each and every one, but I'm going to point out a few that you should probably pay attention to. And in your budget document, you can look at all of these in much detail if you like, and certainly ask more questions if you wish. But the ones I'm going to point out is first is ARPA. I think it's important to see that 72%. Again, those were all one-time costs. This county was really good about making sure whatever we did, didn't have an ongoing fiscal impact. So while it's going away, I can also assure you it wasn't money that we were becoming dependent on for our current operations. It may have filled some holes along the way, but certainly it isn't in that. But again, that is an important element to point out. I think another one, we just talked about the capital improvement and development funds. That's going down and will continue to go down because the money, which is all dedicated dollars, tax exempt bonds, money from the state, we're going to spend it. And we're going to finish the projects, and that's ultimately going to be very, very small. In the past, the most that's ever been is about $3 million for the capital improvement program that we have invested in for smaller type projects. So that is an area that you will continue to go down. The big one that you need, it may look like a small number, but it's very important to note, is the top one, the general fund and local option levy. So again, these are what we call our discretionary dollars that basically use for government purposes. You can see that that's down. So the reasons why is that down? You heard me say earlier, obviously, we are seeing stable growth, so 3% growth. But we also are looking at a smaller beginning balance because of the last budget in terms of some of the dollars that were used. I should also say that in the general fund, there are fee-based things. So let me use one example is the building division for permits. That's down. Building is down. Obviously, we've seen less fees. 2 years ago, we had nearly a $2 million contingency. Now we're coming for you with the building division having to be paid for with discretionary dollars. So again, that has an impact. There's less money available in our general fund. Again, some of that's an element of economy, document recording fees, all of these things. Records and elections is another area that you'll hear in our department that has seen a pretty good reduction in its general fund fees that are charged. So what I want to make sure I communicate here is that, again, property tax, the largest one, is still growth. Smaller growth, but still growth moving forward. Conservative, maybe it's better. I hope so. But again, I think we're wanting to be as conservative because last year, like I said, we saw 3.2%. We are looking at 3 to 3.2% again for the next 2 years. But certainly if that changes as we monitor it, there could be opportunities to recalibrate the budget. I also want to mention the health center. health center funds, you might notice 32.5% increase. Those that have been around might get a little nervous with that. Let me give you some assurance. They have done an outstanding job of trying to renegotiate contracts. I'm not going to get into you don't want me to get into completely the details of this, but basically Medicaid capitation, the dollars you get from Medicaid, they have had a incredible negotiation to increase that. It had not been increased since 2008. And so under the leadership of Lacey Millell and others, they have successfully signed off on that contract, and we're now starting to see the benefits. I think as we celebrate a little bit here at the end of this fiscal year coming up for the health centers, we are looking at one of the bigger positive ending balances that we have seen probably over the last 10 years. So that's good news. Now, there's still risk. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen with Medicaid going forward, and there are obviously policy changes that we have to look at. So you will see in the health center budget, while there is a large amount of revenue that has come in, they're being very conservative. They're not spending it. You're going to see larger contingencies because we just don't know what's going to happen with the federal government. So we have to be really cautious. So again, those are kind of some of the highlights. One very, very important thing, there is a new fund here, and this is actually a really big deal. There is a health fund. And you guys may have remembered in our general fund had both our discretionary money, but it also had all the health department related dollars. So these are contracts, grants that we have. Really, it needed its own separate fund. And this has been a conversation for years in terms of separating. We have now accomplished that. So it is a separate fund. So all of those dollars are going to be housed in a health fund. What that does for us is it gives us a much more transparent view of the general fund. So it really is much more of that discretionary dollars going forward. So again, you can see there's a large increase in the health fund. The reason, crisis center. That's the big piece, and also growth of behavioral health revenue fees. So that's where, again, you'll hear that from our health. So we have talked about revenues. We have talked about cost. Now we put it all together. And this is where I'm going to now start to focus on the general fund. I'm going to shift here a little bit. First, I can assure all of you that, from the other fund standpoint, there are areas, I'll talk a little bit about the fair fund down the road, but every other fund, adequate revenues to support the estimated cost. But as we look at the general fund, I'm giving you kind of a little financial here that basically is showing the situation that was uncovered near the end of February. And basically, when we put our revenues together, we talk always about our beginning balance of general fund at about $18 million is what we're estimating. We have our current revenues that you can see at 110. And then all those pieces that I just went through in terms of personal services, materials and service, capital outlay, you factor that in. Just so you know, in terms of interfund transfers, if you're wondering what that is, we do transfer dollars to other funds in terms of support of that. So basically, that's where a lot of that, some of it is the local option levy moving from one to the other. It's not a huge factor because it's typically sort of a self-balancing because it offset on the revenue. But there are some transfers, and you will see transfers adjustments that we make as part of our remedy. But when you put it all together, basically the total revenues aren't enough to meet the current service level expenses, about 5.7 million. And then you add what we typically do by policy, financial policies, we unappropriate a certain amount. You want to have dollars that you don't budget. That's $5 million. And then we have contingency money you can't touch, spend. So that is there. So that's what the 6.1. So when we put it all together, we had $11.9 million budget deficit. That's what we basically were looking at. We identified in February. And so we quickly mobilized to try to recalibrate and begin working with all of our department heads on how do we remedy this? How do we move through this? And again, short period of time to try to recover. The message you'll hear from me probably throughout is that we have a balanced budget. I'm happy to say we've moved to a balanced budget. but you'll also hear both Rachel and I say, we still got work to do. And there'll still be adjustments that we have to look at as we go into the next budget. We'll talk about that at the end. So what did we do? How do we get to a balanced budget? And that's what this next slide is meant to address. And it's several things. One, it is an opportunity to look at other fund reserves and areas that might enable us to utilize those reserves to help that. We identified approximately $2.3 million of our internal service reserves. Talk a little bit more about those, one being in our health area, not our health, I'm sorry, for our health insurance area and the reserves used to help mitigate cost. That was one particular area. We had workers' comp, a small portion, and we had leftover ARPA interest earnings. So these were all dollars that were setting in contingency. And we said, okay, we can utilize those, but it's one time. And that's, again, part of the solution. We also then took on an effort to identify reductions to take. And in total, we have $15.1 million of reductions. Obviously, our target is on the general fund, but we were able to come up with 10.8 million. That was our focus. We did apply some reduction strategy I'll talk about here shortly that impact other funds as well. So, for example, putting a freeze on management increases and COLAs for the next 2 years has an impact on all departments and all funding types. So that's the reason you have a total $15.1 million adjustment. So starting at the top, in terms of what we did, we have chosen in this budget to eliminate ECI salary adjustments. COLAs, often known as management and unrepresented, is not by contract. So what we have typically done is each and every July make an adjustment. We have recommended to freeze that for the next 2 years as a way of saving money. You can see that based on the current service level estimate, that saved us about $3.4 million total funds, specifically 1.8 general fund. There are position eliminations and freezes. And so people often ask me, what's the difference between elimination and freeze? So from a budget standpoint, it's kind of all the same. They're not budgeted in here and they're not counted as FTE. A freeze, though, is typically when we're talking to the department is that there might be, they want to afford the opportunity to come back if revenues occur to be able to come to the board of commissioners and maybe ask for approval. Eliminations are, we did the analysis and we determined that we can continue to do the same level of work that we do now without the position. So for budgetary purposes, it's all the same, 11.35 FTE or 12 positions. I do want to make a statement that was, and I want to recognize County Administrator McNee. It was very important that we be strategic in this. Nobody wants to lay off staff. I mean, obviously that is something that we all want to avoid. And we were pretty much successful. There was all but one position that was still that was vacant. And that one position, I can assure you, we are already working with proactively to make sure that we find opportunities. So again, that was very, very important for us to make sure that we didn't have that impact now. Doesn't mean that we won't come back and visit us as we move further into the future and we have to look at things. But at this point, that is the approach that we took for this biennium. Another thing you're going to hear a lot about is vacancy factor. Some people love it, some people hate it. This was a new concept that introduced last time to where in all cases, when you go through a 2-year budget, people leave, people come, people go, and there is a savings that is generated. What we had typically done is give all the monies to the department and assume that nobody was ever vacant. Now, the good news is sometimes that money came back, but sometimes it didn't. And so what we chose to do last biennium was implement a vacancy factor based on trends, what the experience has been by department to say, hey, you know, people will leave, and that was built in. It worked out great. We balanced this budget and everything was good. We are suggesting a little more aggressive this time though. And some departments, again, when I went to them and said, hey, we have to find ways, and it's difficult maybe to actually reduce a position, again, not wanting to lay off folks, they chose to went with higher vacancy factor. So again, I want to point that out. I'm sure you will hear concerns about that because that it means that every department head is going to have to be very, very strategic in hiring practices and maybe holding positions open longer. Rachel has already worked in terms of putting in a hiring freeze and a review process so that we can help and look at this carefully going forward. There was a small amount of program and initiative reduction adjustments that we see. One I want to point out, again, I don't want to get in because I don't want to take away from some of the presentations that you'll hear, but we did, for example, with NAPE, have to reduce the amount of dollars of general fund that's transferred to the sheriff's office for the work through program. You'll hear from the sheriff that that's a concern. We are trying to keep that program, but right now there is not an identified revenue source. So again, I'm just giving you a forewarning that that is something that you will hear about going forward. Again, tough choices, but that was an area that, at least for NAPE, felt that they could continue to do their work and save dollars. In terms of transfers, I mentioned earlier, one key piece, the county has traditionally transferred $1.5 million to the health centers, general fund money to support. The good news is, with the additional dollars now with the community health centers, they are looking as they can sustain themselves as most enterprise funds should. And so that is being recommended to be eliminated going forward. And then in addition, the debt service elimination, due to our courthouse project delays, the bonds that we've had had nice returns on our investments. So it's afforded us the opportunity to make that debt service payment with those additional interest earnings and save our general fund some money. So again, one time, but certainly will help us for this time around. The cost savings from internal service department, basically these are savings. We asked our internal service departments, you'll see they've made cuts as well in all cases. And so this is the savings that is generated since all the departments have to pay for those internal services. That's the savings that are generated. And then finally, a small amount for materials and service reductions. The last piece, adjustment-wise to the budget, you will see as part of our recommendation is we've grown a lot facilities-wise over the last 4 years, and there are opportunities in front of us to maybe begin right-sizing and looking at some of these assets and figuring out how to either leverage them for resources or potentially sell them for resources and return our investment. So what is being recommended in this budget is we believe that we can, in consultation with our facilities manager, be able to leverage about $6 million. These are one-time money, but the idea would be to restore our reserves. Because what you're going to see, and what I failed to point out in my previous slide, I'm just going to flip back to this really quick. If you can see down at the bottom, there is a percentage of reserve to operating expenses, and it says 5.5. That's basically the amount of reserves to our total operating expenses in the general fund. Best practice suggests that you're at 12. That's what we try to strive for. That's what we have been at in the past. So again, that gives you a real clear indicator of the impact. So it's not only balancing a deficit issue, it's also, do we have the appropriate reserves to protect ourselves? So the last piece in terms of building this proposed budget and is a new concept from 2 years ago as well, is policy packages. And these are new investments. So again, we calculated the current service level. This is what it costs to keep doing things. But we know that things change. There's workload areas. Maybe there's new initiatives that need to go forward. Obviously, we are in a situation where we just had to balance $11.8 million of a deficit. And so the idea of policy packages, we had to really be extremely conservative. The lens that we used, again, was really trying to focus on the core values that were presented, but also thinking of dedicated funds. Do these have dedicated funds? And where are there areas that are absolute immediate where you may have people, in the case of what we call reclassifications of positions, where they're actually doing the work? Right now, so it's kind of a current service level type thing, and this is essentially permanently classifying. So there's a cost to this. I'm not going to go through all of these because you're going to hear probably a whole bunch about these as we go through, but I'm just going to pick out a couple. Probably the biggest general fund piece is the very first one. You'll see about $660,000 of general fund that's proposed to increase 1.5 FTE to our Office of County Counsel. Vance will be here soon, and he'll talk a lot more about that. I think the county administrator and myself, as we went through this is an area that we certainly are short capacity. And I think Vance will share with you in comparison to a lot of the other counties, well, we're well below. And so this would really help us in potential cost savings, legal type fees down the road. So again, that was the reason that we went forward on that. The other one that I'd like to point out is the $350,000 general fund. I do want to say, even though it's general fund, it is anticipated that a grant will come to the general fund to pay for this. This is for the comprehensive plan update that we started this biennium, and this is phase 2 of it. I think there was an update that was given to the Board of Commissioners recently to talk about that, as well as the grant opportunity, but that's what that represents. The other biggest one, again, I think everybody's very aware, as again, a core priority is homelessness. Our coordinating homelessness response office, coordinated homeless response office, CROW, as we know it. This is increasing by $909,000. This is all dedicated money. So money that has increased from Oregon Housing Community Services. We do anticipate increased dollars continuing in that area. That area has done an awesome job in terms of growing its effort and some of its service opportunities and working with the city of Corvallis. But this is to represent getting a little bit more capacity of that office. Right now, there's 2 limited duration positions. This would make them permanently, but we are adding 1 new position as a manager to that. So again, I won't go through all of these because you will hear more about these in the department, but I'm certainly at the end of this happy to answer any questions if you want me to dive into it. A lot of numbers here, but I think it's just important for you to kind of get an idea of impacts. This is every department that we have. And what it does is it talks about, here's our current service level. Here's the adjustments that we just walked you through. Here is basically what the modified current service level and what the percentage impact is. Again, we started this off pretty much around the 5% mark, but what you saw as time goes along, you start to have to evaluate every department. And so I'll just use it as an example. And I'd like to point out the Board of Commissioners is trying to lead by example here. And we'll talk about here shortly, the first presentation on some of the cuts that we are proposing to this. And you can see it's a pretty significant cut to the budget, 12.9%. So that is an area that we're looking at. District Attorney's Office is a traditionally area that has high vacancy. So in talking to the District Attorney, that was one of the agreements we had made and what we have traditionally seen. So again, that will carry. I like to use HR as an example. You might look at that and say, wow, what's going on? Remember, all the people there are management confidential. So those ECI freezes and those insurance reductions have a bigger impact on HR when you apply it there. So again, there's a story in everyone, but this gives you at least an idea of what it means to each department. So I'm about ready to close up here, and this is what it comes to. This gives you kind of a tour through the process. You can see what our adopted budget start is currently. And once again, as a reminder, that will adjust after we do our next supplement by a little bit. $511 million. Our current service level is 545.8 as calculated. And when all said and done, the proposed budget would be $539.4 million. So you can see kind of the approximate percentages increases that you have in each of those areas. I think of note on this is, again, the attempt to, we knew the general contingency and reserve was going to go down, but could we get it to a more prudent level? Which is a segue to this financial statement to show you a before and after. So the first one on your left is essentially what I showed you a few slides back. And now I'm showing you what the results of everything I just talked about. And one of the key numbers to see here is number 1, we don't have a deficit anymore. So you see that there is not $11.9 million deficit. So we have a balanced budget. But the percentage down the bottom is now 10.5. Not 12, which we would prefer, but 10.5, again, it's typically the rule of thumb is about a 3-month reserve that you have to pay for your operating expenses. That's kind of how that comes about. Traditionally, we've floated around 12 to 13%. We were a little bit higher last time, which was some of the reasons of spending some of that down. I'd like it to be higher as a financial person, but I'm also a realist as well, that there are important things that we have to do. And for us to maintain the current services, I think this is a comfortable level. Okay, so my last slide, and certainly take it to any questions, is really to talk about going forward and the challenges and opportunities. So first I will say, and I said it earlier, current revenues for the general fund are forecasted to be higher than current expenses in 27-29. So again, all these one-time things that I have talked about will go away. And when you put it all together and you're going to have factors, you're going to have cost growth, we are still in 27-29 looking at a situation that we're going to just keep spinning down our reserves until they go to nothing. So my message is we got work to do. We still have work to do going into this budget. It's a balanced budget, but this is where, and you'll hear from our goals, particularly the Board of Commissioners office, where we really have to focus on looking at business differently. We have to think about everything that we're currently doing and to determine prioritization with the Board of Commissioners, what's most important. So again, that's a message that I want to make sure that everybody's thinking about. Challenges, you'll hear a lot about vacancy rates. Again, that'll be something that comes up a lot. Is there a risk? Yeah, I mean, I think the vacancy rates are higher than what we did last time, but I'll also say that vacancy rates, you know, they're going from an average of 3.6% to 4.9%. I'll remind everybody, we were able to navigate that and also pay for those increases that I talked about earlier. So it is possible. I know it may hurt some, and I'm not saying that all situations are a little bit different. When we talk about public safety, that's a big deal. So I empathize with those, but I also know that there are opportunities. I can't say enough about PERS. I think that's all I'll say is PERS. The cost continues to rise, and we're going to have to figure it out. Our side accounts are going to come up in 28. Our PERS bonds are going to be gone, and that cushion that's supposed to keep these rates down is going to go away. And so this is a big deal, and it is something we are going to have to talk about it from a major policy level. There are already now forums coming together with other counties to start talking about how do we work together on all this? How do we defeat this problem? I did mention to you I wanted to talk about the Fair Fund just really quick. This is something I am watching. It's a balanced fund, but it's a fund that has transit lodging taxes in it. And most of those transit lodging taxes we have in the past wanted to try to set aside for master fare plan and capital improvement. And we have done that, and we continue to do that. But the cost is higher than the general revenues for the fare as well as for the operation. So this is another area I think we're going to, if we want to get in balance, because it's going to require the use of the transit lodging tax. The good news is it's there, but it will continue to dwindle that down, similar to what we've seen in the general fund. So I think that's something we need to pay attention to as we go forward. And then lastly, challenge-wise, the federal policies. What's going to happen? What are we going to see? What are those impacts? Some of them we know, some of them we're starting to know, some of them we're guessing. And so I think we're going to have to really be mindful and be prepared to pivot as we move forward. At the same time, I don't want to be a negative person, challenges. I want to also think about opportunities. We do have a wonderful opportunity here to think about how do we increase our efforts around process improvement? How can we deliver things more efficiently? I think we have leaders that want to be creative, they want to be innovative, and I think we can really reimagine and invent ways to deliver services the best possible way and mitigate our risk. County facilities, as I mentioned, they're expanding, and so there could be leveraging opportunities there. And then, of course, the completion of our new courthouse, our emergency operations center, our crisis center really affords us much more efficiency in the delivery of services and new and more effective ways to do business. So with that, Mr. Chair, I will conclude the budget message presentation, take any questions that you might have of Rachel or myself.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Mr. Shepherd?
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to talk a bit about the vacancy rate or vacancy factor. So it reminds me a lot of my industrial engineering background of lean and just in time kind of thing, where you're trying to get as close to the actual costs as possible. But the issue with that is like a single touch of it where it could just make the whole thing crumble, right? Because you're trying to be as narrow as possible, have as much savings built into the budget. But if you need to have more people, if you need, like, if something goes wrong, it can cause some serious issues. So I appreciate that we're building it in, and that I appreciate your confidence in it. I don't like relying on it, on a vacancy factor to come up with a balanced budget, because why are we putting positions into a budget if we're expecting them to be vacant? And that to me has, I'm not always the biggest fan of that, but it's how we made this budget work, and it's the county's practice. So I'm fine with it here. I also wanted to address, you mentioned the transfer reductions for the health centers at you said typically 1.5 a year, and the number what?
Biennium. Sorry, if I said 1.5 a year, I meant 1.5 a biennium.
Okay, 1.5 a biennium, and the number we have in the slide that you showed was 4 million. So what did we transfer 4 million last year or last biennium, or?
So the $4 million reduction on that. So Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Shepherd, what that is specifically is actually 2 reductions. One is 1.582 for the CHC. The other one is the debt service transfer.
Okay.
So that's one that I mentioned, that we don't have to do 1 year of transfer for that, because we have accumulated interest earnings in our from our bonds that we can pay the debt service this one time.
Gotcha.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, that I was trying to make 1.5 equal 4, and that's how it does. Okay, thank you.
I suppose I have some comments and some questions. Obviously, the PERS situation is concerning. I mean, we've been concerned with PERS for quite a while. So maybe today and right now isn't the best time to talk about it, but I'll just say that I am interested in figuring out something.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Wise, thank you as always, Commissioner Wise, and your prudence and thinking in terms of cost. And this is, as you mentioned, something I know you have been part of in the past in terms of trying to control costs. I think it was 2019 that we did the $5 million side account. This gets back to these reserves and why that this is going to be important. So a couple things, I don't know if it makes you feel any better. I mean, we do have the debt service coming up. So while we will have opportunities to look at other strategies when those debt bonds come up, we won't be paying the debt service anymore. So that's money that suddenly will become available to either put into another side account. My professional opinion is that will maybe stop some of the bleeding. I think that there is going to be a need to just kind of rethink about, there are other options that can be considered that local jurisdictions sometimes do in terms of alternative plans. I'm not saying that is what we should do. I just think that those are opportunities that we're going to need to look at. This is an area that we're also going to need some help with. We typically have used Piper Sandler as someone that can kind of come in and advise us. This is complicated in terms of how it's computed and the impacts and the drivers. So I think we need some deep analysis to work that out. But Commissioner Wise, you're spot on that this has got to be an area that everybody is going to be looking at. And like I said, when you see 22 other counties in deficit positions in their budgets, this is a big piece of that.
Agreed. And so so our percentage of reserve to operating expenses is going to be at 10.5%. And what did you say is best practice?
12%.
12, that's what I was thinking. Okay. But you very well articulated the reason for having it at that level. Do you anticipate this impacting our credit rating or?
Again, great question, Commissioner Wise. This is, we just got our Moody's report and we're stable. So that's good news. And I think, they're going to obviously be looking at our balance sheet. And so the good news is our last balance sheet was strong. This next one, as we get to the end of the fiscal year, probably will start to show some dips. And that's when they'll probably start to say, okay, is this something that we need to adjust? You all might recall we got an upgrade 3 years ago, and we have very, very good ratings. So I'm not saying I want to downgrade, but if there was a downgrade, I do think that it wouldn't be detrimental.
Still be in a pretty good.
We would still be in good shape.
And so even if that happens, is there much of an impact to us? We don't have any plans to take out any more financing in the near future.
Yeah, no, again, great question, Commissioner Wise, in that it does help us obviously when we borrow money. But at this point, we don't have any plans in the near future to borrow any money. I wouldn't recommend as a financial officer, or I'm sure your financial officer wouldn't recommend that either based on where we stand. But yeah, that's where you really see the impact.
Okay. And then maybe we should talk about this under the sheriff's budget, but we have talked in the past about trying to start a jail savings, or excuse me, a correctional facility fund or savings. Is that anywhere in our budget?
Commissioner Wise, no, it's not anywhere in our budget, but I think this back to what I said earlier when the real work begins. I think this has to also be a part of this because we have to look at that from the standpoint of the cost associated with the jail. And again, I think the sheriff would be the first to say that, we need a new facility. We need a more modern, and it's going to help us save money down the road in the long run. But I think that has to be part of the discussion.
Okay. And then we can talk about this further also in the sheriff's budget, but did you say cuts to work crew or just completely eliminating work crew?
So the way the budget works, and I'll again let the sheriff and Don talk more about this, it's approximately $400,000 to $500,000 biennial budget on that. Approximately half of that comes from NAPE. So the other half, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to ask them to give more detail on that. But basically, the way the budget is put in right now is that the thought was we could maybe work, and the sheriff can talk about this, to see if there are other revenue opportunities externally to the county. And that's what we put a plug in. At this point, I don't know that he feels confident that he can find that. And so as such, he could be in a situation to say this revenue, it's fictitious. It's not going to exist. I can't get these other resources. So we have to figure that out or decide to maybe cut the program or reduce it.
Okay. So external, like how Republic Services pays to do 99W and Campadere Road kind of thing. Okay. And yeah, we can talk about that more under the sheriff's budget.
Yeah, I know the sheriff is prepared during his presentation to address this, and I just wanted to tee it up a little bit because I'm sure he will have articulate much better than me.
Okay, thank you. And then when we do the NAPE budget too, I want to talk about the TLT. So just throw that out there. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I've got a couple. I appreciate, I think you mentioned having, I guess in February, some inkling that there was a problem and that we couldn't wait for the upcoming budget to start making adjustments, that we started working on the current, making adjustments in the current budget earlier this year. And I appreciate that kind of vision. And along those lines, a month ago, or maybe a little bit more, our county administrator put out I guess both internal and external information on what our budget situation is. And so trying to get word out to all interested parties that our budget situation has changed some, and the opportunities for new projects is pretty limited. And I appreciated getting that word out so everyone has a pretty good idea of the context that we're operating in, and that we're looking for opportunities to save money and pretty limited on any new projects. I wanted to bring up the vacancy factor, and I'm sure individual departments will have some thoughts on that. But I thought that 2 years ago when our CFO brought up that it was a new concept and looking at history and trying to make those vacancy factors more accurate. And I guess I'll throw out, it looks like that was a successful area or approach, and that maybe the percentage that you used was maybe a little conservative. Would you kind of talk about the short history of vacancy factor?
Yeah. Again, this is a, vacancy factor. I'm probably not the most popular person with the introduction of vacancy factor. And I get, and I understand and I appreciate what Commissioner Shepherd was saying in terms of balancing that. I think, I did try to be very, very conservative, and not, this was a new concept. I think there were areas that we talked about 2 years ago that we felt we could probably push, but we didn't. And I think, again, we were able to make it. These new rates, again, I think every area is a little bit different, and you're going to look at, so I'll use a records and elections. I always like to use, they got 6 employees. Idea of vacancy factor isn't going to work really good there. And you're going to see, much lower factors. Juvenile department, another good example. You just don't have that kind with 6 employees turning over. You could actually have all 6 of them working 24 months. So, but then there are bigger departments that obviously could change. I'm not saying it doesn't hurt, please. I'm not suggesting that at all. It's just that there is sometimes more flexibility when you have more employees and how to kind of pivot and move that around. So, so we try to look at that from that perspective. I think in average, again, everybody's experiences are different, but 3.6 2 years ago, 4.9 this time. Average wise, I think, usually anything between 5 and 6% is the norm, is what at least my experience, but what I've seen.
Wait, can you repeat that number? I didn't.
5 to 6% is what I have experienced a lot. I'm not saying that is perfect for Benton County. I'm just saying that standard wise, that's what you typically see. I think, state level, which is much different, but they just slap a 6% on you and say, okay, figure it out. And that's kind of the approach. I'm not saying that's the right approach. I'm just saying it's a way to look at it. So again, it's an element we have to manage. It's an important element to manage, and I think we've been successful in doing that. I'm not saying they liked it, but it certainly is. We've managed it.
Well, I think it's an advantage that we have almost 2 years of experience with it, and so it's a little easier to come up with a more accurate number.
I think to Commissioner Shepherd's point, and it's well taken, is that, it's, I think typically vacant standard, it's just attrition. People leave, people come, someone's at a high salary and someone comes in and maybe they're not as high. There's all of these things that factor in. And typically the estimate we made was really about attrition. People come, people go, and you just get there automatically. You don't necessarily have to. Now we might have to be a little more smarter in terms of maybe wait a little bit longer in terms of hiring. Maybe there's different ways that we can look at it. I still think it's reachable even with the attrition, but I think it may take a little bit more, particularly in some of the other areas. But yeah.
Okay. Back to the PERS, and I assume this may come up again, but and I don't need them now, but you mentioned having some options and going forward, and that wouldn't mind exploring that a little bit. And at some point, I assume there are actuarial tables available to guide us where we are on the curve. And it would be, I guess, reassuring to know when we hit a plateau and when we can look forward to those rates declining.
Yeah, as I said, it's a complicated thing with actuary tables. I'm happy to provide them to you. Obviously, that's what kind of drives our, forecast for the next biennium. But I probably need some help with some professional expertise that can maybe explain that a little bit better. But I think this is an area we're obviously going to need to dive into.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Code?
Kurt, I do.
Chaz, yes.
And if I start to break up, please raise your hand so that I know, and then I can pause. But yeah, I wanted to just touch base on a few things regarding the vacancy factor. I know it's been discussed, don't need to go into much more detail, but I just wanted to say how much I appreciate it when it was introduced, because I know, when I develop budgets for my own programs, it's pretty easy just to drop those numbers in there, as that's how much you need with the full plate of folks. But introducing the vacancy factor really helps us start to understand the nuances and it's challenging to hire people, and there are cost savings available when we use those things. And I really thought of it as more of a advanced budgeting technique that I was not incorporating into my own programs or projects. And I just wanted to recognize it as being, just kind of recognizing the reality of management. And I really appreciated it being there. I know it has to be difficult to figure out what that percentage should be, but I do think it's a smart thing to be including. So I don't need to discuss that any further, but just wanted to mention how I appreciated that. I recognize that some of these other challenges and opportunities that we have, some of the things that are embedded in the messaging is that there are difficult decisions that might need to be made at some point in the future. And it would be smart. And I feel like it is important that we start thinking about making some of those difficult decisions, at least starting to pursue that path if necessary. PERS is a major problem, and it's not on the horizon. It's basically in our front yard, and I feel like a lot of PERS are kicking the road, and I think it would behoove us to be thinking about how to address it sooner than later, whether it's hiring fewer full-time positions and more contractors or whatever other strategies that there might exist. I feel like it's something that's worth discussing now so that the public, the county commissioners, and just folks are aware of what the repercussions are of continuing down the path that we are. If we just keep kicking it down the road, people are going to be surprised at some point, and that's never fun. Regarding the fair, again, if it's something that's costing money, I think that it's something to think about on what are the opportunities and what are the challenges associated with that. Are there difficult decisions that need to be made around having the fair, and how much is it valued by the community? And then just programs and projects, every time we start a new project and program, the assumption is it's probably going to stay in the budget for a long time. And I just feel like we need to start thinking about that. And I think we should have those conversations. I feel like by not having them, that it does a disservice to our community. So anyway, that's all a lot. And I know it opens up a lot of cans of worms, and I just wanted to throw it out there. It's nothing that I look forward to, but I do think it's worth starting to have conversations, if that's a realistic thing that we need to be thinking about in the future. Thank you.
Commissioner Wise?
Thank you, Chaz. I really appreciate you bringing that up and Again, I don't know if this is the best place to have all those in-depth conversations, but I think it is worth mentioning, as you did, and highlighting a couple things that we have done. I know, Rick, you asked departments to engage in an exercise of cutting, is it 5%? So
10% initially.
10%, okay. Which is, was shocking to a lot of our department directors, but it was an exercise. And so some of that work has already occurred of like, you know, if we have to make some really hard choices, what does that look like? And fortunately, we did not have to do the 10% across the board. And things like in the past, or in our last biennium, we set aside money, I forget what we're calling it, an enterprise system, or to streamline all of the county services so that things are much easier. And for example, something that takes an employee in community development 5 hours, you know, switching to a system that now it takes 30 minutes. So that is an initial investment, but it's something that we've been trying to work to.
Commissioner Malone?
Yeah, a couple things. The reserve fund at 10.5%. And when you were talking about that, I captured your comment that you believe that's a comfortable level.
Yep, I'm comfortable.
And
Of course, you know me, I would certainly always want to see higher. I mean, 12% is usually what, you know, you would like. And I think a lot of people strive for. I've also seen in some jurisdictions a lot lower. And again, it usually kind of comes down to what kind of risk you want to take. As Commissioner Wise pointed out, it could have impacts to credit ratings if that's important. But it's also, as often say, you know, the rainy day fund, and in terms of being able to help support things where unanticipated cost.
Okay, thank you. And just a comment on the presentation, the graphics and enough numbers, but not too overwhelming. So I appreciate the kind of figuring out what the highlights are and presenting them. And I think this is a very readable presentation for our current situation and looking forward. So thank you for that, you and your team.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I might just before you break, I'm sure you're going to, just to let you know, one piece to just, and I think I mentioned in my messaging to you, and you'll be getting this likely tomorrow. You know, you always try to make every budget perfect, but then as you get into it, it's like, oh gosh, you know, there's areas that may have missed. I think, you know, there'll be a few areas that we do identify for you, and maybe some opportunities as well. We do know, like the city of Corvallis, we're talking to them about our current contracts with Economic Development Office and how those are paid for. And that could be opportunities where some money could be shifted around or diverted. I'll put that as opportunities. I also want to say, like we unfortunately missed with the deflection program. You'll hear that is that it was not included. And so that will be an adjustment we will be asking you for in these. So again, I just want to point out, and I kind of consider these more technical type things that just, again, spirit of full disclosure, missed out, but I will have a memorandum so that that can be part of your deliberations when you move forward.
Thank you. We've had a request for a quick break. 10:42, can we?
You're on
Back
perfect
at
schedule.
10:50? Okay, thank you. meeting again. And next is departmental budget presentations, right?
Okay. Okay, I'm going to try to do a better job of keeping my mouth close to this microphone. So if I cut in and out, please let me know, or if you're not hearing, I'll do my best. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. We are going to now move into department presentations. So this is the start of one of 16 presentations you're going to get over the next several days. And that represents 15 county departments and one what we call non-departmental, which will be the last one. It's kind of a more of an administrative cost center and programs that aren't maybe attached specifically to a department. So that's the plan, just as a quick orientation. Now we're going to dive a little deeper. So you heard kind of the high level. Now you're going to get more specific into these departments. You're going to hear a lot of things that maybe you heard me say earlier about vacancy factors, about salaries, cost drivers. So again, the purpose of that first piece was to sort of plant the seed for you, so you have a little bit of familiarity on why these costs may be changing. Some circumstances for when you get to the department level, things will be a little different. So the plan that you'll see in each and every one of these, you'll probably be tired of hearing from me, but I'm usually going to be on for the first 4 slides of each department to really set the tone from a budget standpoint. And then they're going to get more specific into the programs, the services, talk about their goals. They're going to talk about the impacts to these budget reductions that we just went over. They're going to talk about any policy packages that they have that were approved, which, as I mentioned, are minimal, but also, and just as important note, and I think this was pointed out 2 years ago, was that this committee needs the opportunity to hear not only those that were recommended, but those that weren't recommended as well. You may not go as in deep into them, but that gives you the opportunity to look and ask questions on, well, what if? And I know that 2 years ago, you guys made some adjustments in relation to that. So that's the purpose of having both the recommended and not recommended. And then they'll finish with kind of challenges, opportunities going forward. So that's just a quick orientation. So we are starting off with the Board of Commissioners office. And I'm going to, once again, I'll take the first part and then I'll turn it over to Rachel to get a little bit more specific. So again, a lot of these slides are going to look the same, but I'm going to just start at a high level in terms of the budget. Again, we start with current service level. What's the cost of continuing to do the same thing? And that's about a little over $8 million budget, which is approximately 10.2% above what our current adopted budget is. So that's the percentage growth of current service level. So again, similar, you'll hear me as a broken record. So the primary driver you'll see is 21.1% growth in personal services. Again, those are the impacts of all of the management increases, as well as some of the additional representation of compounding effect of some of the decisions made, as well as just natural growth. I mean, again, like I said before, most salaries will grow approximately 5% every year per steps. And then you've got COLAs on top of that, or contract increases. So again, you start to do the math, you can see how you would typically get there. I think I said earlier, average wise 2 years ago, 15% is what you see. So now a little bit higher. And that's, again, the compounding effect that I had mentioned in some of the changes that were made. Vacancy factor, we talked that a lot about, and you're going to see a pretty big one here in the Board of Commissioners office. We're going to start out with 4%. That is standard. That's about what they did last time. So again, these first current service level vacancy factors is say, all right, we're going to start out at 4%. But then we're going to move in and we're going to say, well, what do we need to do in our proposed adjustments to try to get to a reduction? So what is being proposed in this budget is a slightly over $1 million reduction to current service level. How we're handling that is, again, the 2-year freezes that I've already mentioned, but we're also proposing elimination of our federal lobbyist contract. We currently have a state and federal in place. We are recommending a reduction of that. I will say, just as a note for particularly the Board of Commissioners, there is an interest in maybe a contract negotiation that can get us the same savings, but still continue the service. But we can talk more about that if you like. All of you remember JSIP, and we are now getting that right-sized into the place of liquidation of some of the additional things. There were some carryover dollars that still needed to be transferred to the courthouse. So all of that is moving away, and we are suggesting some reductions in some of our key initiative, not elimination, but reduction where we can get a little tighter with our SMMP contract for our solid waste plan, as well as our enterprising permitting project, which Nancy, our Commissioner Wise mentioned earlier. That will finish up, but we can still do it at a reduced level. So all in all, the net effect of those adjustments is about a 12.9% decrease to the current service level, which brings our total increase from the proposed budget to, actually, it's a decrease, I should say, to 4%. So I think I really appreciate Rachel's approach on this, is that we need to lead by example. It starts at the top. How do we really think about our own budget? If we're asking folks to take cuts, we need to be able to demonstrate and model that. And I think we have done that within the proposal. We'll talk about those. Obviously, we'll talk about these impacts as we get further into this. So pie charts. So this slide is just to give you an idea of categorical shifts, how the spending has changed. This is a pretty vanilla budget. It's basically spent on personal service cost, which is 64% of our budget. So over half is for salaries and benefits for existing staff. Of note, we were 15 FTE when this budget was adopted. There was you might remember, a webmaster that was approved in the Board of Commissioners that was shifted to the IT department. So that's the reason you're seeing one less FTE. The other less FTE is part of our recommendation for reduction as well, is a position freeze on the administrative assistant that had previously supported me. So that position is recommended as a freeze for this biennium, so we will not be funding it. And I think we believe in our restructure of that, we can get that support from our existing administrative staff. Not that it doesn't hurt, it just certainly we want to be as efficient as possible. And then finally, the total materials and supplies, that's obviously reduced because of the contracts. So lobbying contract, you take that away, you take some of the contracting opportunities for SMMP, for enterprise. That's the reason you see that less money being spent for materials and supplies. Next, my favorite slide of all time. It's my best artistic work. I call it Sunshine. And it's the most boringest chart you will see on any of these presentations. And again, because this entire budget is funded by one resource, and that is general fund discretionary. So that's what that is meant to represent. Oftentimes you see in general fund, there'll be, for example, in our next budget, county council, it's all general fund budget, but there's a dedicated portion to it for law library specific. So you do have some small amounts of dedicated resources that come in, but pretty boring. Not anything to really tell here other than it's all discretionary resources. Now this next one's a little messy, and I apologize, but it illustrates that what we have done, and again, under Rachel's leadership, have really tried to rethink the way we do the Board of Commissioners office and how we get a little more strategic and more functional. We had a lot of cost centers, as we call it. You can see we had JSIP, we had a sustainable resiliency, we had equity, diversity, all important things. But what we're trying to do is get a little bit more organized. As she mentioned, with the establishment of my position as Assistant County Administrator, we're really trying to create capacity and oversight for really three functional areas for the Board of Commissioners. Number one is truly, our Board of Commissioners and governance, and really trying to support the Board of Commissioners. So that budget is a little changed because it's traditionally just been the Board of Commissioners, but it's really that support team of 2.5 FT of governance folks that also support the Board of Commissioners going forward. So that's the reason you see a little bit of change there. And then we have Office of County Administration, which is simply the two of us and our support, which will be one going forward as opposed to two. So that's really that particular area. And then what we have is the Office of Public Relations and Communications. Again, that's our communication teams. That's always been pretty well established. That was an existing cost center, so not a lot of change there. And so that's what that represents. And then the newest is the Office of Resiliency, Equity, and Change Management. And this is where we have tried to move forward with the idea of, change manager position, and also to be able to support various initiatives. So good examples, SMP. Obviously, Sean's back there. I think he's still back there. And, he's been great in terms of really mobilizing to a high priority initiative. That's how we want to be able to use those positions going forward. What are the biggest initiatives, countywide initiatives that we need to take on? Is it going to be housing? Is it going to be justice services? What is those type of things, and where do we actually get that? So again, it's certainly an area that we want to see continue to grow. I do want to just point out one thing I failed to say in the first slide, and it's really important in terms of our reductions. So as I mentioned, the change manager, that is a currently vacant position. And so when we look at vacant positions, it's a potential opportunity. And as such, part of our strategy is a higher vacancy factor, a pretty high one, to be quite frank, one of the highest at 10.8. That is, again, there's always changes, but we're not a huge office. So this is an area that, again, we feel that we can manage it and work it together. There are some cost saving areas that we believe we can still maximize, but obviously if nothing changes, then we could potentially be holding the change manager position open to be able to fill that vacancy. That's not something we want to do, but certainly something, a strategy. And as I said earlier, all department heads are going to have to manage that. But again, I want to point that out, trying to lead by example at the Board of Commissioners office and demonstrating some of the ways to get to that. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel to kind of take off on our organization structure of the board, a little bit more about that, and talk a little bit more about those specific areas I mentioned earlier. Oh, I will work it.
Thank you. Good morning. Once again, I'm back. Since this is a very close-knit office, each one of you work with many of these individuals daily. When you're in here, we share space. This team has transitioned the last couple of years. They have broken down silos. They're hardworking, they're innovative, and they always go above and beyond. I am confident that the budget proposal that I put in front of you, that we can deliver on many of the goals and support this county. So again, I also want to point this out because many of them are in the room today. So you'll see them. We're talking about folks that are right here in this room. And I'm very, very pleased with the group that we've been able to build and some of the innovations that we've been able to put in place in the last year and a half. So there's kind of like three pillars that are actually four pillars that kind of work in the Board of Commissioners. There's governance and BOC support, resiliency, equity, and change management. Resiliency is very important. I think that Rick did an excellent job to kind of forecast the next couple of years will be challenging. Resiliency is going to become an important theme, that we are going to be committed to delivering the services for the county, but we're also going to be resilient doing that. Public relations and communication, I think most of you folks have witnessed that has had an incredible transformation. And many of our departments, the public at will, they're a small team, but they have been very, very helpful. I've never seen an IT department work so well with the communication department, and really that thought leadership and collaboration within the departments. There's been a lot of trust brought back. So I also wanted to build that back. And to go back to governance, a perfect example of this is the launch of Civic Plus, which has allowed us to really go down one full-time employee, because we are generating about a day and a half back in hours that Commissioner Wise talked earlier. It's an example in community development that when we can introduce some automation, we can do more things. So that has been really, really great as it has been moving forward. And I can't underestimate having an assistant county administrator, that the 16 direct reports that I had, the attention to detail and operations and execution could not work without a better partner than Rick Krager. So that has also been a huge, huge advance in capacity for the Board of Commissioners to be able to be out, into, what's important for the county as we move forward. So I want to thank you with that. So as you can see, this is our org chart, and we can, of course, when I finish my presentation, we can come back and talk in more detail of the individuals or folks or our functions. Next slide. Board of Commissioners. The Board of Commissioners serves as the chief executive and legislative body and hears certain matters such as land use issues in quasi-judicial setting. Under this county charter, they have broad authority to enact ordinances, appoint citizen boards and committees, and take administrative actions and enter into agreements with other public agencies and organizations. To achieve that, we have estimated it takes about 3 full-time employees within the county budget to support this. In addition, the commissioners are supported by the Office of Governance and Support, which results to the county administrator. The office includes 2.5 full-time employees who provide direct support to the commissioners and advisory boards in administering this government function. This office is critical in ensuring all public meetings are run in accordance to, I do notice there's a typo of 2, state and county regulations, and that commissioners are provided with accurate, relevant, and timely information that help them make critical policy decisions. They are also supported by contract by both state and federal lobbyists to help represent county policy interests. They support critical policy changes and identify and pursue funding opportunities for services that effectually meet the needs of our community. That in total is over $3.3 million and has a full-time employee number of 5.5. Next slide. The Office of County Administration. As we've discussed, that is myself, Assistant County Administrator Rick Krager, and it's 2 administrative staff to provide leadership, that's present state, to county departments to ensure operations and services and meeting the goals and objectives adopted by you, the Board of Commissioners. The county administration is also charged with overseeing execution of board policies, key initiatives, managing the office, advising the BOC on administrative matters, and providing oversight that ensures effective stewardship and accountability for all county programs, services, and process. That, folks, is about $2.6 million with a full-time employee account of 4. Next slide. We've talked briefly of the Office of Public Relations and Communication. That makes up 2 folks, and it's about $968,000. The Public Relations Communication Department, I think, is going to continue to grow in capacity. They prep, coordinate, and disseminate all public information and communication. They coordinate various events supported by the county as well as the board. They support all county departments in key initiative processes, press releases, social media, county oversight of information on the website, administration of county branding and publication, and they are a spokesperson on many of our media events. Kind of the new Office of Resiliency, Equity, and Change Management presently has 2.5 full-time employees of existing positions to focus on the following. They evaluate and change county services design, delivery methods, and the quality of services, and embed county values into all service delivery processes. They help plan and implement new ways of operating that effectively, meeting the needs of that population being served. They apply equitable services lens below and during initial outreach on all new programs, services, and projects. They are in constant research mode and help with our county-wide initiatives and projects that are part of our county strategic plan. They lead the county strategic planning and development processes, and they also improve and redesign services to more effectively accomplish the county strategic goals and core values. Sometimes they live here, but they also do work and are embedded into many of our departments. An example recently would be over in community development with our comprehensive plan and other work that kind of goes throughout many of our departments. I'd like to move to the next slide and talk about our Thriving Communities Initiative. Now, with the help of you, the board, we will develop a leadership dashboard. I know I've spent a lot of time talking about dashboards. I love dashboards. I think data tells the story. So one that we are very committed to, because I think we have the right folks in place, is begin to show the departments as well as the board that we're going to make data-making decisions, and they're going to be driven and followed by trends and leveraging our data. I think there's real big opportunities in transportation and process improvement, and we want to be able to develop those data points and metrics by December 31st of 2025 and implement dashboard no later than June 30th, 2026. You'll hopefully see that recently with some of our facilities plan But overall, when we have our leadership meetings, it will be kind of a talking point that will try to bring every department up to this level to be tracking data. And again, I'll be working with the board on what those metrics should look like. Goal number 2, next slide. By June 30th, 2026, we want to create a plan that successfully right-sizes all current facilities for existing and future needs. We own too many facilities and buildings. It's time to have that assessment, reduce our excess cost and waste, and leverage existing surplus assets to rebuild our county reserves. I think it would improve public perception of upkeep and quality. And we're going to see those opportunities with our new courthouse, our new emergency operations center, the new Barbara Ross building. And also we do have even in this building, we have opportunities to expand and kind of, I call it restacking much of our staff so we can work more closely together. That will be goal number 2. Last goal of the Thriving Communities Initiative is something that's very near and dear to many of your hearts, and that is to bring best practices and support and stimulate the growth of workforce housing and economic development in Benton County. By June 30th, 2026, formulate a regional advisory work group to complete a strategic plan on how best to support efforts going forward. We believe we can build this capacity with our existing staffing structure in the Board of Commissioners. We go now to our adjustments, which was discussed by Rick Prager earlier. But to get into the finite details, the BOC office is proposing a reduction of 1.04 million. This creates the following estimated impacts. We're going to reduce the administrative and professional capacity to help state and federal initiatives and funding opportunities. That's with cutting our federal lobbyist services right now, which we know have been extremely beneficial. And again, we can talk into details of some opportunities there. County will reduce its scope and anticipated outcomes for key county projects, including SMMP, operational efficiencies, and project management. We're going to have some position freezes, which will be required to meet extremely high vacancy factor. This is leading by example. That will be the organizational change manager, which will be at risk of delayed hiring in the biannual freeze. We're going to reduce flexibility in supporting unanticipated funding requests, initiative supports, and all other identified priority projects. And again, we can talk a little bit into detail, but the chart to the left does give some of the exact impact. Next slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about we call them POPs, Policy Package Request Summaries. We are recommending 0 right now. However, we want you to look at them so we can tell you where we could go. In addition to the Office of Board of Commissioners current service level, 8.1 million, there were 2 additional requests of policy packages. That would have been $948,000. All would have been supported within the general fund. Based on review by myself and Assistant County Administrator, neither of these packages will be recommended due to the current general fund constraints. As a result of this requested policy packages and applying the $1 million in net budget decreases, this will be 4% less for our 23-25 adopted message. Policy number 1, we requested a 1 full-time permanent manager to oversee the Office of Public Relations and Communication and improve the overall management and oversight of county communications. We've seen a big shift in county communications. We wanted to add to that capacity moving forward. This is something that I would like to readdress in the future. We have also lowered contracted services within our communication fund because, well, frankly, many of the folks that we hired have some of those skills, like in graphic design and photography. This improves customer service and public relations. We are not recommending it for this biennium. Number 2, next slide, is to establish a full-time permanent policy and operations position for Regional Housing Subcommittee and creating a housing production strategic plan. Again, I think we can meet this goal, but not with another individual. That requested amount was $673,000. financial services position, pricing calculations and estimate. This is what we came up with. We still believe we can do this, but to have that individual would have created a larger presence in the county and region in identifying strategies and solutions that effectively address our housing crisis. This is not recommended. Next slide.
Rachel, could you put the microphone a little bit closer to your mouth?
Hello, there we go. How's that? We're going to talk a little bit about our future challenges and opportunities. As you know, it is a challenge to hire and onboard new department leadership positions. We've seen that. This is why the vacancy factor needs to continue to be applied. It just takes time to try to find the right folks to meet and lead a team. It really does take time. We are actively in a CFO search, and we are beginning a search for a community development director. My expectations is we will continue to have change. We're going to try to continue to seek solution for an aging and undersized county jail. This is really a priority. We need to increase county costs to outpace current resources. We're going to have spending controls. Hiring and retaining leadership positions for all county departments will continue to be a challenge we've discussed. However, there are opportunities. Some of those opportunities are modernizing our county facilities. They're easier to heat. They're easier to run. They help with workplace morale. They help with those folks who use and come into our county facilities every day. Those are some opportunities that are really going to help. I'm excited about our EOC Center, our Emergency Operations Center. When we just had a great forum on fire and our wildfires, and just the opportunity for folks to be together during a crisis. All of our emergency personnel tells you that this county has a commitment to emergency response. Government needs to work and be there for people in emergencies always. Reorganizing this BOC office, clearly identify everyone's responsibility and expectations. That's the change manager. We've talked about it for over a year. It's our commitment to equity, diversity, inclusion, and it's going to make us a more modern and effective county government. That individual, that change management, working towards it is something that I'm really committed to as your county administrator. I want to continue to support the Sustainable Materials Management Plan. I think it has statewide attention. It's got legs. It's important. And we're going to have a county solid waste plan. And I think we have the talent to make that happen now. I'm committed to process improvement and data-driven decision-making. We see the results when it happens. We have a happier staff. We have happier constituents and citizens who work and want to interact with us every day. And that concludes my proposed budget for the Board of Commissioners, and I'm open to some questions.
Yeah, I can get us started with this. I wanted to talk, I don't want to talk about it all day, but I did want to bring up vacancy again. So I'm just trying to understand, I'm looking at the page 11 of our packet from today, where it talks about a vacancy factor of 4.0 is included in current service levels to match the rate from last time. But at the bottom, or in the next bullet, we're talking about increasing it from 10 or from 4 to 10.8. So which one is the recommended one? It's the 10.8?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, so we're now operating, so this budget is coming to us with a recommendation of a 10.8% vacancy rate.
That is correct.
I see 12.5.
And that is I apologize, that is a typographical on the
Okay,
the
so-
12.5. It's the 10.8 was the original. Yeah, I apologize.
That's okay. 10 what?
10.8.
10.8, where'd you see the?
10.8. Page.
Oh, on the next page. Or
So on the summary page, as is up in front of you now, you notice that the 10.8, that's the correct one, but further down, I unfortunately missed the piece right here where it says 12.5 in the third little row. Sorry about that.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. And that's from held vacancies for the change manager position.
That's pretty much how that came to be, was I think, initially it was a situation where, again, if all else fails, we will have to keep that position vacant, and that would meet what you see here. But if opportunities come along, because as Rachel indicated, this is a critical position on making change down the road, there may be other opportunities that we could exchange that for. So that's the reason we want to maintain the position and the flexibility to continue that, but know that if that flexibility doesn't present itself, that's what we're going to have to do.
So I do have another question, but I want to follow up on this one real quick. So, I mean, what we're saying is, if I'm interpreting this correctly, we are funding a position and then we are reclaiming almost all of the cost for that position by calling that a vacancy. And then, I mean, he just nodded and said yes.
Well, wasn't our change maker taking the place of our DEI coordinator? So it was one FTE there that now is changing to one FTE. Change maker, or am I wrong?
So you are correct. You're both correct.
Okay.
In that that position is, as you identified, Commissioner Wise, the equity position that has been reprogrammed into the change manager position, which is a broader perspective that we think is important, as opposed to eliminating that position because we think it is still near. We've taken equivalent vacancy factor, as Commissioner Shepherd alluded to, and have said that if that may be our only option if there are no other flexibilities that present themselves. If someone left tomorrow, maybe there's opportunities where you shift that around, and that's the point of keeping that, because it is such an important position to the county. We don't want to just completely let it go.
Yeah, and I understand that. I'm just concerned that, like, if we find it's a strange thing to me to fund a position and then to reclaim the funds and allocate them somewhere else in a vacancy factor. So I understand that going out for this position would be important, and I think that they would do good work. It doesn't make sense to me about why there would be, like, where would the money come from if we did find somebody to fill that position? Because we have expended that money or allocated that money otherwise in other places because we've called it a vacancy saving.
So again, from a management practice going into this, so we're getting sort of into the implementation, operationalizing of it, we won't hire that position until we have an approach.
Okay.
That will be the recommendation I make to Rachel, is that if she went out and said, okay, I want to hire it tomorrow, then we would be in the dilemma that you just described. We can't be in that. We don't have any other options. So, but the idea is that if we maintain that position, it is still a active FTE that we can consider.
Okay.
If other options present themselves. That's the big if.
So it's not like it doesn't sound like we're going to be out searching if the opportunity arises where we have the funding, we can then go out for the position because we've left it in the budget.
Got it.
Okay. And then my second question has to do with the policy package number 2, which is the housing production strategic plan, and it's recommended at 0. And, this is like the county administrator said, it's important to some people up here. I'm one of them. And I did note that, one of the recommendations of this is that this can be absorbed into current staffing levels. And so I just wanted to call that out, that's the commitment that this budget makes, is that we'll address it with our current staffing levels. And I really do think that that's something important that we should look at during the biennium. I agree that 600,000 is too much to spend when we're cutting across the board, but I do want to just emphasize that this budget seems to be making a commitment that we're going to work on that within our staffing levels.
Again, we may lead on it, but we're going to have other staff that we are going to work with. We work with Hope. There are folks who are dedicated to housing in other parts of the county. But again, with SMMP kind of it's not coming to an end, but it's going to have a different workload. There's some capacity with our folks, especially our policy folks, that we can take up some of that work and help with that coordination. And I think, remember, there was funding for JSIP we're not doing anymore. They used to have a dedicated person just doing that type of work. we really want, we really smart people who work here, and they're doing wonderful work in sustainability, but we're also seeing that they can also work in lots of different areas. So it's also looking at the capacity of what we have, as opposed to just keeping someone in a one single focused way of policy, where they're able to pull from a lot of different departments, community development, health. There's a lot of different, the city, and coordinating all that work, that I think we can do it.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Shepard, if I might, add, to your point, I mean, the way this particular policy package was envisioned may not be the way that it initially was rolled out. Obviously, that was a $600,000 cost. So I think with your guidance, the Board of Commissioners guidance, as we've already begun talking, what does that scope really look like? Maybe it isn't a full-time regional housing committee, or maybe it's just an advisory group for a short period of time. I think we still need to learn that, but I know in our discussions with the board, we think that it's possible to maybe reshape this a little bit different. I think this recognizes, as you said, this is an important issue.
Thank you.
I wanted to note that I think it's appropriate to say if the Board of Commissioners decides to go that direction. Not that we wouldn't, but it's a policy decision that we have to make amidst lots of other policy decisions.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Couple things I appreciate, I guess, this being the first budget, and the phrase leading by example was used, that we're have a constrained budget, and the Board of Commissioners is trying to do our job with less staff. But, and kind of tagging along with that, being more efficient, being flexible, figuring out that people can do different jobs. And I think that makes a lot of sense. So appreciate that. Early on, the deputy county administrator's assistant position was not filled, and just a concern there that I hope we have and I trust your assessment that we do have the horsepower in-house to move people around as needed to make sure you're supported. But as you're sitting here today as our fill-in CFO, we ask a lot of you, and want to make sure that you have the support you need so that you can get all the jobs that we toss at you done.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And again, I want to, recognize Rachel and what she said in terms of the organization of the Board of Commissioners office, because I think, coming into this, obviously, new position entering, but now we're trying to figure out how do we best utilize our team, our organization going forward. I want to recognize the two young ladies to my right who have just been incredible, Rachel and Mariah, who's really just stepped in and been terrific in terms of administrative supports. And so again, part of it is Rick learning how to also, interface into the Board of Commissioners office and getting used to it. And it's, again, it's always a bit of a challenge, but I think it's also opportunity. And so thank you for that. I appreciate it, but I do feel good about where we're going.
Except his graphic design skills.
They're sufficient.
It was mentioned our current federal government relations, and that we will be making a change, whether it's freezing or renegotiating, and I would strongly recommend renegotiating. I think that DZ effort has served us well in the first, I guess, couple of years, 2.5 years that they've been on board, and it's already been mentioned, the uncertainty at the federal level and having a person there full-time to try to get the information and guide us through, I think we can say, unprecedented situation where things are put out on a daily basis, and well, is that one real, or is that just for consumption, but not really a policy? And I think at this point, it's more important than ever to have that federal help. So just it's for that, and renegotiating is fine, but I think we have somebody on board that we trust, and to maintain that relationship that basically we've just got started on, I think would make sense. And on the Solid Materials Management Plan, SMMP, the timing is a little bit unfortunate. We have our last meeting tomorrow. We're supposed to get a report in approximately a month to wrap up this kind of whirlwind process. And I would hate to see us losing momentum. There are, I think, opportunities going forward. We have something in the legislature, a proposal to stand up a task force. That's one of 48 task forces proposed. And so I'm not sure how good our chances are of prevailing there. I'm hopeful, but I think it'll be a different situation going forward. Fortunately, I think because Benton County has taken the lead in this process, now we have partners that we can, other counties and the state, to share the load going forward. But I don't see the financial situation going to zero on this project for Benton County. So we don't know if this was a month from now, we might have a little clearer picture what the situation is, what our needs are going forward. But I think we need a little flexibility in being able to continue this process with partners, other neighboring counties and the state. So I would, I would hate to see this line item go to zero.
And Commissioner Malone, if it makes you feel any better, that is not the recommendation. There's a reduced amount of carryover dollars, but it still enables some of the things that you're talking about. It's just not the same level that we had initially estimated for. So I can assure you that that effort will continue. Obviously, can't wait for the actual plan to come out, but we also know we have to deal with the solid waste plan as an important element. So working with Sean and the team, we want to make sure there's dollars available to keep that work going. So if that makes you feel better, it's just a reduced amount.
Makes me feel a little better.
Okay.
Okay, we're not walking away.
Thanks.
Any other questions, comments? No? Thank you.
Oh, one more.
One more.
On the communication effort, I think that's gets more important every day. We used to have a newspaper that we could depend on to get a lot of our information out, and that situation is changed quite a bit and just not dependable, which means we have to rely on ourselves to communicate with the community. And I think we've got a good team in place, but that's a critical effort. And so want to make sure that's adequately funded and be able to get our message out on a regular basis.
Okay. On to,
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. So now with that, I think we're going to move into Office of County Council and invite Mr. Croney to the table. Hopefully he's back there. Okay, well, again, I think we're making pretty good time. We're always trying to make sure we're staying on track, and I think things are going pretty well. Make sure we get you guys fed and out to lunch. But we're going to jump into the Office of County Council, and as before, I'll start off here with sort of a budget overview, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Croney to talk a little bit more about some of the work that he does, but also most importantly, some of the expansion or additional policy packages that we're looking to add. So again, I'll start off as I did before. This is a relatively, again, general budget in terms of mostly general funded. This is a $1.1 million total budget, of which about is an increase of approximately 24%. Again, not unsimilar to what you've seen in other areas. Personal services is the growth area that you have. Both the positions there are management represented positions, therefore they'll have a bigger impact in relation to some of the reduction pieces that we'll talk about later. But again, the 32.6% is an area of increase for that particular area. There is no vacancy factor applied here. Again, it's kind of hard to put a vacancy factor to 1.5 FTE. So I can assure you again, as we see these smaller departments, particularly advanced representing the smallest, you won't see those, or if anything, they'll be very, very small. There is a proposal in this to have budget adjustments, 6.4%. We didn't have Vance actually introduce any, again, very, very small budget here, but what is represented in terms of the reduction is once again the ECI freezes, as well as the recommendations in terms of the retirement that impacts, and then also the impact of internal department reductions. So he doesn't have to pay as much. Specifically. So that's what that represents. The biggest piece, as we've already talked about, is the 661,000. I know, again, Vance will talk a lot about that, and increasing, basically doubling from 1.5 to 3 FTE in total. You'll again see Vance will talk about, he did have a request for a little bit more, but again, with budget constraints, we had to be thoughtful about that. And so that budget package was reduced. So the net effect policy packages is about a 52.3% increase to the current service level. Again, that's the biggest that you'll see, but it is the one place that we do have a policy package recommendation to increase. So again, categorically, not a lot to be able to share here specifically in some of the categorical changes. To no surprise, obviously personal services, 83% of this entire budget because it's mostly just staff. Already talked about increasing the 1.5 FTE. Overall materials and supplies, they've decreased that you can see in comparison, but that's mostly expenditure patterns. Vance is a good budgeteer. He always looks at his trending and makes adjustments where necessary, and that's really what the element of that is. There is a capital outlay piece, again, that you will see as part of his policy package, because with a doubling of staff, there will need to be some space modifications. And I think he can talk about what that might look like going forward. Contingency growth, you might wonder what that is. That is specifically to the law library. Luckily, we've kind of turned that around. Primarily, I think that's an element. The reason we're looking at a larger contingency is because he had been using it with staffing. And now I think this next biennium will be mostly temporary in terms that we use. So lower cost, more contingency, which is a good thing for the law library because we were running a little thin in relation to that. Vance used to have the very, pretty chart, which I called the sun, but I actually dressed him up a little bit more. It's a little bit nicer here where 91% of his dollars is really discretionary. But as I mentioned, he is all general fund like us 100%, but there is a small portion of that comes from the Office Judicial Department to support the law library. So that's what that 8.6. So I didn't want him to be so boring. I wanted to make it look.
Is that a partial eclipse?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. So, but again, nothing, this is again, a pretty vanilla budget in terms of the resources itself, but he does have that one special. So again, 2 cost centers primarily, that is the Office of County Counsel. And then ultimately the law library is the other component. In terms of, numbers on this particular presentation, I know again, you'll see the proposed increase might catch your eye at 109%, but again, that is related to the policy package piece. And when you're only talking about, not even $1 million current service level budget, it doesn't take much to make that change. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Crony to talk a little bit about the Office of Counsel and some of the things he's thinking for next biennium.
So thanks, Rick. This is a highly unusual budget presentation. Highly unusual. In fact, I'm a little nervous. Every time I've been up here, every single time, I've talked about the law library, and I've said, "Do you have any questions?" And if I'm up here for 5 minutes, that has been a long day. So this is something I am not used to, so I'm leaning on Rick an awful lot. Really, what it boils down to is the time has come to expand legal services for the organization. One of the things that I've done is I've tried to put together some information in the slide deck here that shows how things have changed since I came on board in 2002. So 23 years of organizational change, office change, project change, personnel change has happened. My office has not changed a bit. In fact, we have reduced our personnel. You take out inflation, we've reduced our costs. But primarily, as you all know, County Counsel's office represents the organization, represents our service districts, represents the employees. So all 600 county employees are free to call me at any time, email me, stop in the office, and ask questions, ask for advice, and I encourage that. That's kind of like that old Fram oil filter commercial. You can pay me now or you can pay me later. And I'd rather them come in early, have a problem addressed so that it doesn't become a big problem at the end. And that has worked very, very well over the years. But again, with 600 employees, it gets harder and harder to accommodate all of the employees. And candidly, it gets harder and harder to keep up with all the new legal requirements, federal requirements, state requirements that are asked of county lawyers. I like to say that I am an excellent utility player, but I'm not an expert in any one thing. And with so many projects, services, and employees, it's gotten beyond my capacity to serve the organization well. So, skipped, got me. All right, so basically my goals are about as boring, vanilla, to use Rick's phrase. They go toward the idea of growing legal services in the county. So obviously the first one is to increase county counsel's office from 1.5 FTE to 3. My budget package or my policy package was to go from 1.5 to 4. The idea being to add 2 attorneys so that at the end of the expansion, we'd have 3 attorneys, 1 full-time legal assistant. And I have to say that this is really difficult to ask for these positions, knowing all the other departments are cutting. I feel incredibly awkward asking for money to be put additional into county counsel's office when, health services, sheriff, DA, they're all taking cuts. And so I do feel a little bit awkward putting forward this policy package. And I think that is reflected in the fact that the recommendation was not to go to 4, but to go to 3. With having said that, I feel uncomfortable asking, I do believe the organization is at the place where it needs 3 attorneys and full-time staff. So just know that if you don't grant, if you don't give me, no, if you don't add 2 attorneys, the next budget cycle will almost certainly see a request for another attorney. It's just gotten to the point where we need the bodies. So right now we're looking at going from 1.5 to 3, and that would be the first goal. The second goal is tied to that, and this is the one that is both exciting and anxiety ridden, because bringing a new attorney up to speed is not going to be easy. It's not just the legal work, because that's not the hard part. It's the personalities. It's the interplay between the various departments, the interplay between the projects, understanding how our services impact the public or impact the project, and then knowing what kind of advice to give. And because there are a lot of people in the organization that say, what are my options? There are other people in the organization that will say, what do I do? And training somebody to understand how to interact with, remember 600 employees can call at any time. Understanding the organization is going to take time. So that I'm not certain how that's going to play out, but that is a big goal that we will see the fruits hopefully in 2 years. And the third goal is telecommuting. It's one of the things that we have worked on. Teresa works, she doesn't work remotely, but she might as well work remotely. Teresa is our legal assistant. She's also the law librarian. On Tuesdays, she works at the law library, and she works from my office remotely as well. Would like to expand that. Once we have a full-time employee, my thinking is that maybe 1.5 days a week, I'd like that person to work remotely so that we kind of address this goal. We'll see how that works. It may also be, and I understand talking with some of the other department heads, that our younger group of employees have a very different expectation for their work-life balance. And it may be that the second attorney that comes in asks to work a day or 2 remotely. I don't know. So I think that is something that I'm going to have to be very flexible and have no real expectations until the person presents themselves and we're able to assess the quality of work we get and determine whether or not that's going to be a feasible option. But those are the 2 areas where I think this goal can flourish is with the new hire. So this is Rick's slide. This is not mine.
Thanks, Vance. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, and I kind of touched upon this, all departments, of course, have some level of budget adjustments. Vance was not one of those departments because of just, again, the sheer size of what we were talking about here and the fact that majority of his cost is all related to personal service. However, he is impacted from the fact that, the policy decision, or at least the recommendation, was to freeze all management ECI increases and reduce the percentage of retirement that is contributed by the employer. That obviously has an impact on both Vance and Teresa, and that's what the savings that you get there. The other piece is the cost savings from internal department reduction. So again, Vance does have a $72,000 reduction. All in all, again, as Vance alluded to, we did have a policy package consideration here. We are recommending a $661,000, which represents the 1.5. He had asked, it was going to be a cost of $812 is what we had estimated in relation to the original budget of 2.5 FTE. And so basically there, again, it isn't an element of need. It was essentially looking at it from the perspective of, what can we afford? But yet there is still a big need. So again, I'll just kind of don't need to go through this too much. Again, this is a summary of the policy package itself as was presented. But I think what's more importantly is Avances has some additional information here to share to kind of maybe justify and demonstrate the need and in comparison to maybe some of the other areas.
Yeah, if you go back just one, please. Thank you. So just to give you an idea of how our organization has changed, how the complexity has increased, just give you some examples of some of the things that have changed since 2002. So back in 2002, when I came on board, we didn't have any health clinics. We did not have a health center. We now have 5. Back in 2002, our health department had about 99 employees. It now is going to be pushing 200, plus the almost 100 for the health clinics, and the number of employees that the county has that provide health services to the health department and health clinic, and that council's office supports, has tripled. And the types of services that we are providing didn't exist back in 2002. For example, we provide assertive community treatment, crisis service, clinic services, dental services, houseless program and assistance, low income housing assistance program, warming and cooling centers. And that's just what's new in the last 20 years from the health services division. So the health department, I emphasize that because that is a significant area that I support that also requires a fair amount of knowledge in those fields. And it's not just something you can pick up. You have to learn it, you have to study it. So that's an area where I expect the new attorney to have to emphasize is health services. And that's going to be even more acute, unintended, because this summer we have the crisis center coming online. So with those additional services and the additional employees and the building, just add one more specialized type of service that county council's office is going to have to support. Another thing is procurement. I know that's probably the most boring thing we can talk about is contracting and procurement and solicitation. But way back when I started, every single department did their own procurement. They did their own contract management. They did pretty much their own bill and bill pay with assistance through financial services. We have now consolidated all of the procurement services and contract management into a procurement division within the financial services department. And what that means is the two women who administer that program, I support them every single day. It is not just the office manager in Public Works who's making decision on whether to pay for the rebar that they purchased on Monday or hold off on until Wednesday. It's our procurement asking me, hey, Vance, can we push off this payment? Do we have to have the bill? Do we need the invoice? Do we need to have evidence that the rebar was supported? So whole level of complexity with our procurement department that county council's office now supports. We always provided it, but it was marginal when you had more of the experts within each department managing the contracts. We also have hundreds more contracts every year that we manage as opposed to what we did 10, 15, 20 years ago. So procurement services takes a lot of time. And again, that's an area where another attorney will be asked to step in and provide that kind of assistance. Service districts. I mentioned service districts as one of the basic things that county council's office supports. Back in 2002, we had 5. We now have 9 service districts. So that is just another area that we don't think about, but that is something that the county provides to the citizens and to specifically those citizens within the defined geographical boundaries of those districts. But it's surprising how frequent those one-off questions arise as they relate to service districts. And again, we now have 9 of them. Another thing that I never thought that we would get into as the county, we have an RV park out at the fairgrounds. Okay, yeah, okay, fine. What does that mean? That means we have landlord-tenant issues that we have to be aware of, which something that when I became a county attorney, I really thought I was getting out of, but no, it's like a boomerang. It just come back. So that's another area that does require, paying attention to. Emergency services. 20, 22, 25 years ago, emergency service was an afterthought. We never gave emergency services this time of day. We're now at the point where emergency services is part of everything we do, which means it requires legal support, legal input, and understanding of how the various emergency management elements play within projects and within personnel job experiences. The last example I'll give you is the labor relations. That is a big one. As you all are well aware, last fall, Benton County went through its first strike. Back in 2002, 2003, 2004, I think Libet was our prior HR director. I think it took her 3 or 4 sessions to negotiate her ASME contracts. They were very straightforward, very amiable. Everybody was on the same page. We're not at that place anymore. We want to get back to there, and I know we're working hard to try to kind of rebuild our trust and our relationship with all of our employees. But the complexity, I think I hate to say distrust, but there is some level of that requires a lot of support, legal services. I don't support any of that right now. Probably 14 years ago, I did provide labor and employment advice to HR, but as we moved into more difficult, more nuanced grievances, contract interpretations, it became clear we needed to have specialized legal advice. And that's where we turned to outside counsel to provide labor and employment legal advice to the county. And it's been invaluable because I simply don't have the time. I don't have the time to dedicate 2/3 of my time just to one department. And I don't have the capacity to get up to speed to the level that HR would require. So labor relations is an area where the assistant county counsel is going to be asked to step in right away and demonstrate a lot of competence and provide good guidance and legal advice to county and HR. So those are some of I just want to give you an idea of how things have changed. Even though our office hasn't expanded, we face these changes and the growing need for county legal services as a result of some of those examples. All right, what's next? Graphs. Oh, yes. I love graph. I love these. So this one really doesn't do a whole lot other than to show you what we haven't done. And we haven't expanded at all. So what I found interesting, so I came to the county in 98. Our law firm had the contract to provide legal service to the county beginning in April of 98. And as you can see, before I got here, there were 3.5 attorneys. And that blip at 2.64 was when one of the county attorneys out of the 3 had health issues and dropped down to not quite full time. So they were running for the 90s with 2 attorneys and 1 full-time staff. We dropped from 2.5 full-time attorneys and 1 full-time legal assistant down to 1 full-time legal assistant and one attorney. And back in 2006, the board's office asked for help because they didn't have enough staffing. And so our legal assistant went over halftime and provided halftime services to the board, dropping us down to 1.5. So that's where we've been for the last, what is that? 18 years or so. So you can see we've been remarkably consistent, which is why I never get up here and spend more than 5 minutes on my prior budget presentations. The next one is not so much about the numbers, but about the trend you see with those charts. And the one on the left are the personnel expenses only, not materials. County Council is the second group from the left, and you can see the last 3 budget cycles, the sharply increasing personnel costs. So Board of Commissioners office, skipping County Council over to finance, HR, and the last one on the right of that left slide is IT. And you can just see how quickly personnel costs have expanded. But if you look at ours has been pretty darn steady and consistent over the last 20 years. And that's simply because we don't ask for anything. We've never asked for, I don't think I've ever asked for an additional dollar in my budget. Whatever the finance person has given me, that's what I said, fine, we can make do. The slide on the right, that's the FTE, and as you'd expect, the sharp increase over the last 3 budget cycles really does mirror the personnel expenses on the left. What I think is interesting is if you look at the middle group there, which is finance. Back in 2002, they had just under 9 FTE. They're now almost at 21. HR, for example, has gone from less than 3 to 11 FTE. So, and I'm not calling them out to say, look what they've done. I'm only using them as examples of how the county has grown and how the complexity has increased, yet County Council has stayed the same. Next slide. So this one, I've got 2 that look the same. I just want to show you what the colors depict here. All those counties with yellow, those counties have just 1 county attorney. The counties with blue, that are in blue, they have 2 county attorneys. Those that are in green, they have 3 county attorneys. And red, 4 or more county attorneys. So you can see that as you're going up and down the valley here, we are out of step, with the exception of Polk, with our counties up and down the valley, and certainly those surrounding Benton County. And I pulled out the population so you can see how many attorneys serve the population of that particular county in our surrounding counties. And I want to emphasize, Lane is incorrect. It says 14 attorneys. That's 14 people in their county council office. They have 8 attorneys, 6 staff. So that's my mistake. Yeah, I know. Yes, and Lane does their labor relations. We'll go to the next slide. So this one, same. Oh, and in case you guys are wondering, Hood River, why are they yellow? And not because they're a duck. They're not duck. They have contract attorney, and they have 3 contract attorneys that provide general advice and 1 that provides land use. So a total of 4 in Hood County. But this is broken down by what I've pulled out are the FTEs by the county that surround us. So for example, up at the top, Marion County has 1,658 FTE, 10 attorneys. It's about 1 attorney for every 165. Lincoln, you have 3 attorneys for about every 180. Lynn is 3 for about 280. Lane, if you take out the 8 and make it, take out 14 and make it 8, it's about, what did I write down here? 1.8 Yeah, it's about 260. Benton County right now, bottom left there, yeah, we're at 1 for every 603 county employees. If we go to 2 attorneys, we're at 300 employees per attorney, which means we're still out of step with our surrounding counties, which is why I've warned you that in 2 years, I'll probably be back asking. But that gets us closer, gets us much closer. And last but not least, this is the cost for outside counsel that the county has expended over the last 8 years. And as you can see, it fluctuates wildly. We spend the bulk of our money on outside legal services on labor and employment, eminent domain, land use, and general help. I've got a law firm in Salem that I call on, Garrett Heeman Robertson, that I use for assistance. In fact, I used Kevin Schuba to represent the county. We had an assessment case where an individual didn't care for the property values appeals board, used to be BOP, is now PVAB. So they appealed a case up to revenue. And I did not have the time to take that case. So I hired Kevin to represent us in that particular proceeding. But you can see, go up and down, but over the course of 8 years, our average cost is almost $175,000 a year. So when we talk about adding $531,000, if we cut out the bulk of our outside counsel, we're going to be paying for more than half of the added expense for increased county counsel staffing by savings not going to outside counsel. So 2 things I want to just I want to make sure you're all aware of. One is these cost savings will not happen immediately because I fully expect there to be a ramp up for the assistant county counsel as he or she gets their feet under them, understands the organization, and then we wean ourselves off some of these outside contracts. Second is, depending on the expertise of the assistant county counsel, they may not do eminent domain. So if we have an eminent domain case or we have a land use case, maybe we still have to have outside counsel, but it's not going to be an exact 1-for-1. I think that we'll have a much clearer picture. I would expect probably December, January of 2026 of how our cost savings are shaking out. And there will be cost savings. So that's what I have. Any questions? I know I haven't touched on the law library, but any other questions?
Mr. Shepherd.
Yeah, with looking at time, I'm going to be very quick. My only question, my statement is, I'm very supportive of this change. Each county department is different, and the fact that yours hasn't changed in literal decades, is just telling that, this is a time for change. And while other departments are going to be going through their own things, you've got your own things that we need to support the county council through. So I'm supportive of this change. My question is the 1.5 FTE. That's an increase of 0.5 to the legal assistant and an additional counsel.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So about when we're talking about the cost savings, I know there's no way to know what that is today. And maybe this is a conversation for another day, but will we not still need outside help on occasion?
We will.
Okay.
We will. And I can give you a perfect example, bond counsel. Bond counsel is the type of outside legal advice that you have to get. No internal county attorney has knowledge on bond issuance. So that'd be a good example.
And
Perhaps it all depends.
And I know you touched on the labor relations. Would we still have some outside help? Because I'm just thinking, if I'm in the union and I'm coming in talking to a Benton County employee, it doesn't feel very, and then later on I need help, I'm probably not going to go to that lawyer who I feel like was against me potentially.
That's a really good question. I would expect we would have outside counsel for the one-offs and in labor relations, because the dynamic you just described is very real. It is why I have steadfastly refused to participate in labor negotiations, because I want all 600 county employees to feel they can come to me, feel like they can come to me for anything. And you're right. If assistant county counsel or I get back into representing management, then we create the impression that it's not county counsel for the whole organization, just for management. So yeah, I expect we'll have some outside counsel for some things, but not nearly as much as what we have now.
Okay, I am happy to hear that, and I also am supportive.
Yeah, what I underlined here is overdue. And appreciate that you have tried to maintain a steady budget and be a good team player, but it's definitely time. I'm a little curious on we kind of have a shopping, or you have a shopping list of skills that you would like to find, and probably difficult to find all the skills in one person. And what's the timetable for having them on board?
I have sort of mentally targeted the first of the year, 2026.
Uh, that kind of blends into the question of when you start shopping. Because just because you want somebody doesn't mean they're waiting for your call. And what was that?
Rachel's very optimistic.
So it is a shopping list. You say, well, I'd like, and maybe prioritize if it's labor relations as at the top of the list, or but seems like it might make sense to, and I don't know if there's a seasonal factor for hiring, but I guess I would encourage to start looking fairly soon. And just, we have examples of it taking quite a while to, I'm thinking of department heads, but, you know, we have the need, there's an opening, and it can take a while. And so I guess I don't, the need is here. You've amply demonstrated that. So I guess that would be my advice is develop the list of qualifications that you're looking for, and at least kind of casually put the word out and start looking, and maybe you pick up the pace later in the year. But and I guess the other thing I appreciate that I know we've been spending a fair amount of money on outside counsel, and so this added expense isn't, there's some unknown unknown amount of subtraction from that expense. And so appreciate seeing what other counties do and what we're currently spending, and it's time to move on from the one-man band approach to county council.
Anything else? No? You have your own Superman outfit. Obviously, you've been wearing all these years, you know, so. Is there, so there's another two you're looking at, right? Another Superman or Wonder Woman?
Yes, yes, yeah, that's a very interesting way. And by the way, I'm going to point that out to my wife. I'm looking for a Superwoman. I don't know what I'm going to say.
Wonder
Curtis Ray
Woman.
told me that.
Okay, so we're wrapped up for the morning
Mr.
session.
Chairman, that concludes session one for today. Session two will start at 2 o'clock with the sheriff's office. So you have a little bit of time to eat and catch some air.
Before we go, I want to make one comment. Thought I should have done this in the beginning, and that is this gentleman down there who has joined the budget committee now is Mr. Cody Hall, okay? And I apologize for not doing that in the very beginning. Okay. Welcome. Okay, so 2 o'clock. I got a hammer.
Thank you.